eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your
day of September 2019. Good morning and how are you doing? Welcome to the Situation Room. A minute past 6 o'clock. The room is full as always. CT Muga, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Had a good one?
Yes.
You know my questions. By now you know the drill.
I know the drill. Yes,
Anticipate the
I
question
had
and
a
answer
very, very good evening. Slept well, woke up well. Yes, bright-eyed. Yes, and I'll leave it at that. Bright-eyed. Yes.
Nothing bushy at all.
Yes.
Ndu,
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
You're right.
I'll be awake soon.
No, you look awake actually.
Oh,
It's surprisingly you don't feel like
things are not always as they seem.
I see. This is one of those deceiving moments. But Jerry is awake.
Very much so.
Very much so. How are you, Jerry?
Good, good. No complaints. A bit of my voice going a little bit.
It'll come back.
Hopefully.
Yes. In the next 5 minutes, Jerry's voice. Check in, please. So a lot has happened in the world, both locally, internationally. There's drama everywhere, every side you look at, right? So let's start with the local Kenyan drama. In the headlines, Magoha yesterday took a tour around a couple of schools within Nairobi, and he ordered the closure of one of them, and he said that his officers should continue doing inspections and closing down schools, what he called unsafe schools. This is after what happened the other day, of course, in Dagoretti South. And he says, we are acting in the best interest of our children. The building this building is not any different from the other one that collapsed in Dagoretti. If anything happens, I'll be the one to blame. This is when he was closing down the St. Catherine's Children Education Center, Bombolulu, to Ayani Primary School in Kibra. That's why he was doing that. He moved the students from one school, that's the St. Catherine's Children's Education Center, and moved them to Ayani Primary School in Kibra. Is that enough, CT?
He sorted it out?
Let's say this.
Or do you say this?
No. It's good to be generous.
Yes.
Let's say that it is a reasonable start. He is trying to indicate that the ministry that he's taken charge of is trying to do something. Let's see. By the time we get to next week, let's see what else they'll have done, because this really is just scratching the surface. But at least it is scratching. It's a movement.
It's a movement.
It's a movement. Let's see what happens next week.
You actually predicted this when we were discussing it the day before yesterday.
Yes.
When we were saying we're not sure what kind of action is going to be taken here. We'll just see maybe the owners of the school in Dagoretti being taken to court. But other schools, other safety concerns in other schools may not be addressed. But at least we are seeing the CS has actually...
Eric, bear in mind that, you see, one doesn't want to... I don't want to vilify the minister this morning. Remember this report, the report of schools that were derelict and required rehabilitation. This report came out 5 years ago. Came out 5 years ago. Not was written, came out 5 years ago. He's been a minister for barely... He's not even a year yet.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So... let's give him time. And time is next week, not next year. Let's see what he'll have done. Why I say this is because the individual whose charge is the county of Nairobi has taken some very stern action. Yes. He has actually told a whole slew of executives to just step aside as investigations are from a minister. So some can say it's dramatic, but it is a definite step. You cannot say that he sort of like whitewashed the issue. He said, this is the department in charge. It's not that you did it. It may have happened before your time, okay? But you are now in charge, and this is your position. Step aside as we investigate. Yes. So it's against that backdrop that I say, okay, somebody has taken some action. He has taken his. Let's give him time.
Actually, now when you speak of that, Why hasn't Magoha taken any action against the education officials who had licensed the school that collapsed?
That's what I'm saying.
And even the one that is shutting down.
Maybe he
Who was responsible?
I'm saying maybe he decided, let's move the students first. So, students' welfare first. Let's see the students are
Let's
settled.
deal.
Okay, now, they're settled now. Okay, now, let's deal with these people who actually brought about this situation. That's what I'm saying. Today is Thursday. Let's give him until next week and see.
Let's see if by Thursday next week he would have actually done something. And we would hope that, there's a kind of plan in place.
Yes.
And it's kind of following with CT's trail of thought.
That's actually something actually does happen.
Yes.
Let's see. There seems to be a crisis at City Hall as Sonko's reign of chaos continues. And this is reported by The Star today. Governor Mike Sonko threw Nairobi County into a crisis yesterday. We're assuming that everything was all right before he did this. After he suspended 16 county officials, including his super CEC, Charles Kerich. The mass suspensions followed the recent tragedy at Precious Talent Academy, where a collapsed building killed 8 pupils. With the latest changes, nearly half of Sonko's cabinet will be serving in an acting capacity, meaning they cannot make some decisions. So he's returned to the city and he says, look, while I was away, certain things happened and we cannot have this continue. And so he's basically put people to task over why things were not done in the way they ought to have been done. And it says that if charged, the county may be plunged into more problems. If now these officials are actually charged, the county will be plunged into more problems. His leadership style has rubbed many the wrong way, raising questions about his management skills as head of Kenya's capital city. So the two issues there that basically are
He's
being
doing it
looked at.
different. He makes everybody uncomfortable because you do your job. If something happens and you don't do your job, take responsibility. And this is it. I mean, so we are seeing a different style here in leadership and management. And so people are feeling
mismanagement.
or mismanagement, and people are feeling uncomfortable about this because of the actions that he's taken. So he's saying something that has happened, and your department is concerned. We need to investigate. So step aside. How is that throwing you into turmoil and chaos?
Of course it doesn't, but you need to understand that people, once something goes against what you would want, then it's akin to wrong. It's just the way we think.
But if you look at that article, are you then saying perhaps that Charles Kerich's friends in the Star are coalescing and reporting? Because, well, I'm merely
He was
asking.
suspended, wasn't it, our Charles?
Oh, yes, he was.
Yes. And he actually was a
He was a
content
member
boss.
of the Star.
Not
yes.
just member, he was the
Quite senior.
Quite
boss.
senior,
He was the boss.
Boss, editor-in-chief. But the truth is this: it's again perceptions of what we see these things as. We have a culture where people decline to step down when they should. So when somebody enforces and says, step aside, what he's doing is the right thing.
It is.
A problem has arisen. They're not saying it is you, it is your department. Just step aside. It's the right thing to do.
Because truly, if you hold processes dear in terms of how things should be done the right way, you shouldn't really have a problem for somebody to step in and see what exactly went wrong so that we can fix it, which is actually the attitude that you would think people in positions of public office would have. Let's see what the problem is and let's see how we can fix it.
Mr. Charles Kerich is 2 years old? And he wasn't always in this docket. He's been in 3 other dockets within the county system.
Right.
Okay? And these are decisions that everyone knows were made long before he ever became that. So it can't be that this man has suddenly perpetrated. But the unfortunate thing about positions of public office is that so long as you are in that office, it has nothing to do with what you did.
Under your watch.
Yes, you are in that office at that time. That's all.
That's true. And at this point, it doesn't really have anything to do with Sonko's management or mismanagement at this point. We're looking at an incident that happened and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. But we'll always take take advantage of a situation then to talk to the character of the man instead of looking at the issue.
On the other hand, though, actually, we should think about that city planning department because really, so initially, Sonko had already suspended a number of them, the
Yes.
head of the department and
Yes.
some senior managers. Now he has suspended others.
Even the one who
Who-
had been suspended has been suspended
Yes, has
again.
been suspended.
And interestingly, he suspended health CEC, Mohammed Dagane, and you wonder, what did the health guy have to do with any of
Everything.
this? So I think he's
Public
taken
safety.
advantage
Because
of.
they're saying that the person in charge of public safety, public
Yes.
health and safety,
Yes.
is the health CEC.
Yes.
And in fact, Kerich, because he's in finance, is because he was the land CEC before this. When
Land and housing.
Land and housing, when that building came up.
He made him a super CEC in July.
No,
so they
actually,
were
the
quite
building
close,
came up
apparently.
before he was even in that docket. He got the docket the other day. This building has been there for quite some time.
Right.
Yes.
Uhuru reaches out to Somalia over border. That's the Nation headline today. Of course, we were discussing what he might place emphasis on during his time at the United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York this week. So, of course, this is to do with the maritime tussles
Dispute.
with with Somalia, whereby, well, we won't go into the details, but yesterday evening, Kenya was last evening playing down Somalia's apparent rejection of another bid for an out-of-court negotiation over a maritime boundary dispute, with Nairobi insisting it was only an initial offer. So apparently we're playing it down. But the Egyptian leader, interestingly enough, was one who brokered the meeting between Uhuru and Farmajo during the UN Assembly in New York. So interesting. I would have
Abdel
thought he-
Fattah al-Sisi is a peacemaker. You know, so you guys in Tahrir Square should know this, and just go back home. This man is making peace in the world.
Everywhere
He's
except in his
focusing,
country.
on making peace. He's also telling you, let's sit and talk.
Yeah, probably worth highlighting what the background of the dispute is, given it's of such importance to the nation. So, Somalia sued Kenya at the International Court of Justice, asking that the current sea boundary between the two countries be drawn based on the extension of the land border, which flows diagonally. The dispute affects an area of about 100,000 kilometers squared, and the ICJ will, from November the 4th, start hearing the submissions in public from both sides, after which a verdict will be issued. In the meantime, Kenya had reached out to the AU, warning that the court's rigid decisions risked fomenting further political divisions in the region. So it sounds like Kenya is at a disadvantage so far, because we're having to reach out, try to negotiate. That's what's been going on there. That's the background of that.
Yep. Somalia insists that this thing has to conclude at the ICJ. Kenya has complained in various fora that the judge at the ICJ is actually Somali. So there's a question of bias. Is he going to be impartial when he's dealing with this?
And at the time, I think, of this happening, we had Amina Mohammed in the foreign docket, interestingly enough.
Yep.
I am not going to comment because I have nothing positive to say about that particular state official. So I will say nothing.
It's, of course, it's not anybody's allegiance that we're questioning here. We're just mentioning.
So there's, the Kiambu governor has been told to keep off the office, and the deputy governor is acting as governor. So when he came in, he tried to reshuffle a couple of CECs, right? And one of them that was reshuffled, crucially, was the finance CEC, and other organs are saying, no, we don't. So somebody has gone to court and said, no, Nyoro should not do anything like reshuffling or hiring people. And the court yesterday stopped him from sacking or reshuffling the cabinet. Justice Onesmus Macau stopped Nyoro from interfering with existing county executive members who were appointed by suspended Governor Ferdinand Waititu, pending the determination of a suit filed by a voter contesting his move to assume executive powers. This is a good move, actually. Let's see how far this can go, because it says if you're acting as a governor and you come in and you feel that because you need the county needs to keep working, can you reshuffle members of an executive that you presumably had participated in appointing?
These
clearly
these court cases are good. They are good. I mean, one of the things that they seem to do is they seem to bring to our attention certain legal components of democracy that we perhaps don't actually understand. So every time I read something of a court ruling, I may not agree with it, but I say it's a good thing because we now understand something about the law that we didn't. And now it's also they've also brought into that particular arena further discussion on the same subject. So this is a good thing.
It is.
It's a very good thing. And let me ask you something. You were saying something about Kabogo. The former governor.
Former governor of Kiambu.
Kiambu County.
Yes. Yes, and he has some views to express on these matters. Good for him. Good for him.
All right. A House committee now wants President Uhuru Kenyatta to pick another nominee to serve as the country's ambassador in Seoul, South Korea, after dual citizenship standoff with Mwende Mwinzi. The Committee of Implementation yesterday recommended reversal of National Assembly's approval of Ms. Mwinzi for appointment to the position after she declined to denounce her U.S. citizenship. The House had directed the nominee to denounce the citizenship before taking up the role. So I guess we're looking at...
What is this thing about, really?
She was born in the U.S.
Yes, that one we got.
Yes, and she holds dual citizenship, obviously, with the U.S. and Kenya.
Can you renounce a citizenship such as the one she has, which is given to you by virtue of your birth?
By virtue of your birth.
How do you renounce that one?
How do you do that? And
why not?
This is a bit confusing because at the same time, Kenya does uphold...
Are you saying you can't?
Kenya does
It depends on the law of the country. I do not know what the laws in the U.S. say about this. That's why I'm asking the question. I don't.
Kenya does uphold dual citizenship.
It does.
So now what we are saying is that in the position of public office, you must be solely Kenyan, and then dual citizenship flies out the window.
Is it constitutional?
Because of the state office or public office?
Is it constitutional?
The issue in the Constitution about a state officer. A state officer is like a president. Who are the other state officers, Jerry?
I'm not sure, actually. I would have thought some ministers and sensitive dockets, so foreign minister would be a state officer.
Yep. So those ones need to have sole allegiance to this country because they are representing this country. So the question is an ambassador a state officer or a public officer? And it comes down to the point where the state officers have been declared, have been mentioned clearly in the Constitution that these are the state officers, and an ambassador is not in that list of state officers. So Mwende has actually taken this case to court. Yes, and she's challenging that. She's saying. She's challenging what the parliament has recommended, that she should renounce her American citizenship and only take up Kenyan citizenship before she takes up this job, saying, no, but this is not a constitutional requirement. I am not a state officer.
Yeah, the committee chaired by Moitalel Olekenta has also recommended that the House considers reviewing existing legislation to expressly provide for ambassadors and high commissioners as state officers. So that means currently they are not state officers. So this rule should not apply in this case. We're looking at the current situation. And if we are looking at the current situation, the lady should be allowed to go ahead and do her job for which she was selected.
Unless you change.
And this review is not going to take 2 minutes. This is the review that is going to be taken into consideration. It's going to go through the process of debate, etc. Before then, it now becomes part of the amended law. So if we are looking at the current state of things, Mwinzi should go and do her job.
Could there be a conflict of interest if you're in a foreign country and you have 2 citizenships? Where does your allegiance lie? I think that's the matter at hand.
That is a matter of hand. And they've actually gone ahead to now ask for they've directed Foreign Affairs to conduct an audit on all serving ambassadors, establishing if they have dual citizenship or not.
Mm-hmm. So one woman rejected for a position. Second woman, sorry to make this about gender, but
don't be sorry.
Another woman, House rejects Uhuru choice for NLC post. So that's the National Lands Commission. Tia Galgalo. Yes.
You got it.
Out after KRA cancels her compliance certificate. So this is a tax compliance certificate where a parliamentary committee has seen it fit to reject one of President Uhuru Kenyatta's 9 nominees to the NLC Commission over integrity issues. So it's either a good thing for us upholding integrity, but I wonder why men aren't given such a rigorous examination, or their vetting is not as rigorous as women. I tend to find we're a bit unfair on women.
Do we know that the vetting of men is less vigorous?
I think so. Just a bias, a natural bias.
Is that what we are saying?
No.
That's what I'm suggesting.
I'm looking for evidence because...
Well, this is it. Here's some evidence. On the same page, page 4.
One individual.
There's 2. We've just spoken about Mwende Mwinzi too.
So let's also talk about Kazungu Kambi, man.
Yes.
There's a push to reject Kazungu Kambi, and there's push to reject Owen Baya as well, from the same land commission by the same parliamentary
Are these men
committee.
masquerading as women?
No, I think they are men, as far as
Or is
they've
it
even
women
presented
masquerading
themselves.
as men?
As men.
Yeah. But in this matter, KRA actually came in and said what Ms. Tia Galgalo had come and presented to you as a tax compliant certificate had been fraudulently obtained from KRA. She actually had not filed some returns. There were some questions, and she therefore had acquired this fraudulent. She should not have received a tax compliance certificate if due process had been followed. So that's what KRA told the assembly. We are in the paper. Do you know that? Spice
Sorry,
FM?
what now?
Spice FM?
Yeah.
What have we done?
You didn't know?
Which paper are we in?
Not the standard.
Well, we're on the Standard
Oh,
newspaper.
surprise, surprise.
Yeah,
Goodness.
Right. We've been covered by the Standard newspaper. You know that big national newspaper? So on page 22 of the Standard today, spicy Decca for good vibes only. Wordplay there. Spice FM, Vibes FM. 22. A radio studio is a creative environment, and Vibes Radio and Spice FM combine vibrant colors and nostalgic murals to create the perfect space. So if you want to think about Decca and all, please tune in to Spice FM on www.spicefm.co.ke. You'll actually see the studio. Also on Spice FM on Facebook, we are live streaming. And actually, our producer Brian will be able to show you a longer angle view of the studio right now, how it looks like, the colors and all. What colors are these?
It's earth colors of heat and spice. Orange,
Well,
red,
where?
yellow.
Earth
Like-
colors of hate. There it is. It's on now, live on Facebook on our website as well.
orange.
www.spicefm.co.ke.
Orange behind you. Okay. Earth, burnt orange is what's behind you.
So burnt orange.
Okay. Let's carry on. Let's move along swiftly.
So this is it. So a lot also has happened around the world. You want to start us off on that, CG? What's happening in the UK, in the US? Delve into that.
Yes, the debate in the UK is still around Brexit. After the Supreme Court ruling, which in summary said this, that the Prime Minister was unlawful in proroguing Parliament. Very simple. Other details follow, but these are the subjects of debate which we shall be looking into later on. That's number one. Number two, in the US, there are some impeachment processes that have been in the works. The Democratic Party have been making noises. Some people have been toning it down. The Speaker of their assembly there, a lady by the name of Pelosi, was accused by some of not wanting to proceed with this impeachment process, but now she has assented and the processes have begun. We again will be looking at this thing in greater details later on. But the thing that I just want to mention in passing is that when one hears the name Pelosi, you would assume that the Speaker of that assembly is a recent entrant into politics. No. She was in this same position when President Clinton. She wasn't Speaker then, but she was a member of the
She
House.
was in the House.
Yes, when when impeachment processes were brought against President Clinton. So this lady has been around the block a couple of times.
A couple of times.
Yes.
She knows it.
Yes,
She's
she knows
seen
the
it.
lay. She knows the lay of the land.
I'd like to raise a conversation then now back to Kenya, and then we'll come into your conversation on what's happening in the US and the UK, and also localize it. So, the former governor of Kiambu, William Kabogo, he says he'd like Uhuru Raila out of the 2022 poll. He says that the Uhuru and the opposition leader should step aside and just save the country from acrimonious contest. Basically, what he's saying is there's this feeling around the country that with the BBI push, they push to have some constitutional amendment and go into a parliamentary system, which is what is in the headline of Standard today. Raila saying Kenya is ready for a parliamentary system of government. With this kind of push, there's a feeling around the country, within some quarters in the country, that this is actually a move to create a position for the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Raila, and other people in senior positions of government. So is this a right thing? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And Kabogo is basically saying, no, let's not create a position for you people. Let's not create a position that actually makes you feel like you have to continue serving. Just step aside. Yes, you can usher us into this new dispensation, and then you step aside, and from that position of senior politicians, you'll be able to actually guide us through this process. You'll be stepping from that level where we are looking at you as elders of the country and telling us this is the right way to go, and you guide us into the right way to go. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Actually, he also mentioned Ule Jama Mwingine in reference.
These elders,
in apparent reference.
he speaks of with reference to this country and these functions that they have.
In a seniority in serving in Kenya.
Where have we seen it work? Or are we supposed to invent it?
We're going to actually look at that. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should also William Ruto not seek an elective position in 2022? I think that, well, it's okay for Raila because he hasn't been the president. But I think Uhuru should not seek another executive position in 2022.
You will be interfering with the man's rights. Seeking, the law is clear about him wanting to be president again, but to seek other positions, he has every right, like any Kenyan, to seek any position he sees fit to seek. He can decide to be MP, he can decide to be governor, he can decide to be senator.
He can't decide to be president if we're still under this presidential system because the constitution
It's clear
allowed him.
That is what I started by saying, that the only thing he cannot be is president.
Yeah.
But everything else is fair game.
Well, maybe under the new constitution with this...
under the BBI constitution.
Maybe he can't even be
Even
president.
with this
Who
current
knows?
constitution, he can be MCA if he wants.
Stop it.
In this current constitution, Uhuru
Yes, he can.
Uhuru can go and take up any other leadership.
He can.
But not national.
He can even be governor of the central bank.
Not national chief executive. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You see, national chief executive, no. National chief executive Uhuru should not even entertain, and he has actually even been asked before. You remember when he was having that conversation with the CNN's Richard Quest, and he was asked. So some people are saying that you're too young, that you may seek to extend your term in office, and he said that cannot even rise. Why? Because there's a clear framing of this in the Constitution. The Constitution says I can only serve 2 terms, and after that I cannot seek a third term. So it's clear in his mind that he cannot be president again under the current framework.
Yeah, president.
Right?
However,
President again. And that is head of government and head of state.
That's fine, but I don't think that clarity applies to other positions that he possibly could play a role
He
in.
can be governor,
Under
yes.
the current constitution, our head of state seems to be also head of government.
Yes.
Is that not so?
Yes.
But if we divided those roles, then of course what you're saying would immediately become moot. Because, yes, he has been head of state. He could now, once you divide those roles, it's not the same thing. All I'm saying is, your point may be valid insofar as we are saying that we need to implement the letter of the Constitution.
The spirit as well.
Okay, let's implement the spirit also.
And what does this spirit speak of? We're looking at the spirit of the Constitution, which says that once you've served your time in public office at a certain level, then when that term is over, then you must now take a back seat and allow the functions of government to continue under the rule of somebody else,
Yes.
or under the administration leadership of somebody else.
Yes.
Who's to say then that you could not serve in an advisory capacity? Who's to say that you could not serve in another executive capacity, so long as it is not the president of the nation?
That is fine. So long as it's not head of state or head of government. And that is the spirit.
If the
Head of
Constitution...
state
The
or head of
spirit
government.
is
in
the
this case.
essence of it in terms
Yes.
of what is the intended purpose of it. And I think really it's just to curb too much power so that somebody's not in power for too long. But you make a good point. What if he becomes something in the executive that's very powerful, or becomes an advisor to the next president and still exercises some power, and then maybe comes back after that term, like Putin?
I support that fully. In fact, you see, the thing is...
You support that in terms of it could happen, or you
No,
support
in
that
terms in terms of actually...
it should happen?
It should happen. Look, we're talking about somebody who has had the experience for 10 years of being head of state and head of government. He knows a lot. He has done it. He has experienced it. So he can serve as an advisor.
So is that
Taking
upholding
up-
the spirit of the Constitution?
I think so.
The,
Because
well,
the
the
cons-
spirit of the Constitution here being that what they've envisaged or what the intention of the drafters
Yeah.
was for somebody not to be in power for too long.
Yes.
So if we're allowing him to come into power through other avenues, are we upholding the spirit of the Constitution?
I think
if
when
we're
you-
looking at the spirit of the
I
Constitution.
think when you are an advisor, you're not necessarily in power. You're basically advising the person who's in power. They can take your advice or not, right? You become an elder. You're sitting there and you say,
Eric,
and you have
that
not created,
goes without
No,
saying.
And we have
what
not-
I'm
no.
asking is if by
Actually,
allowing
no,
him.
it doesn't go without saying, because that is the theory of it. Advisors, by their very nature, tend to be very powerful people. And in reality, they're the ones who often referred to as powers behind the throne. Remember?
Yes,
Yes.
And he's saying, but the president can choose to, the future president
Yeah.
can choose to take his advice or not. Yes, absolutely. But having said that, now I was coming to your point,
Carry on.
where I was going to say, but they do wield enormous power over whoever it is they're advising. And in doing so, is that withholding the spirit of the Constitution not to let somebody be in power for too long? No, it's not. That was my argument.
I think the way I'm looking at it is this way. So when you have that position, you've got the mandate, the authority, everything, the instruments of power handed over to you by law, by constitution, and the buck stops with you, right? So it's you who we shall be talking to if anything goes wrong. You are the president, you're the head of state, you're the head of government. Your advisors, you can choose whoever you want to advise you. And we don't have a framework that says you must choose so and so as your advisor. You can choose so and so as your advisor. And if you come in as an advisor and you're advising, I'm former president, I'm advising Ndu, who's now the next president of the republic, I'm telling you, I think you can take this route. I think you can go here. I think you can do this. You can, create a national council of advisors, and I'm sitting in it, and CT Muga is sitting in it because he's an experienced politician who has never been president or head of state or head of government, but he's experienced. We can sit in this and tell you and give you advice now and then, but the buck stops with President Ndu.
We're not disputing that. I think what we were discussing was whether in allowing somebody to come back to public office in any capacity, we're upholding the spirit of the Constitution. The spirit meaning the sort of intention of the drafters, and in this case, in not allowing presidents to serve more than 2 terms, the intention of the drafters is to make sure somebody is not in power for too long. So if we let this person then come back in another capacity, we are not upholding the spirit of the Constitution, because then they are still in power and enjoying the sort of
The
spoils.
trappings of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then it's actually, so you're agreeing with me that come 2022, the president should not entertain any thought
No.
of being
I'm not agreeing with
Head-
you. What
head
I'm
of
saying
state
is
or head of government.
in allowing him to come into power, we're not upholding the spirit of the Constitution, unless, of course, the Constitution changes.
Where does we allowing him come into it when we have a constitution that actually guides us and gives us direction as to what ought to be done? There's something that I sometimes marvel at. When we try to lay down certain rules and regulations that are figments of our own making, what yardstick are we following? These rules by which certain things must be done and by which we must abide, what are these rules and who sets them and what standards are these? We're discussing politics here.
It would be interesting because are we looking at unspoken conventions that we've kind of gone with, or are we looking at something that's actually been drafted in a document that we are following? What do we follow? And then now when we look at situations like this, what exactly are we following that then determines the action that will be taken? Something unspoken that we say yes, we can allow that kind of thing, or are we saying no or yes based on a document that has been arriven at?
You see, we're discussing political processes here. Okay, now the reason why I have these constitutions, they're supposed to help us understand these processes.
Not understand. They're supposed to
Guide.
not even guide. The Constitution is quite a heavy document. It's not just advisory. It's completely binding. You have to do as it says, verbatim or word for word. It's open to interpretation in some instances.
You're contradicting yourself here.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Tell me how.
I mean, if you say word for word and we must go by it, then interpretation, you've brought in a variance.
It's open to interpretation.
Now, the interpretation is what I was proceeding by when I
All right.
said that it offers us a platform from which we can actually function.
Right.
Yes, because in the absence of that constitution, then it would be the wild, wild west. Now, all I'm saying is, when you have clarity as is provided by the constitution, then what are these other things that we want to bring into it? Is it a cultural way of doing things? Is it a habit? What is it? Because it's our own thinking of what should happen. If it aligns itself to the Constitution, fine. If it doesn't,
we throw it out.
no, it's not a question of throwing it out. Change the Constitution. Because if you feel it must be a certain way, and that's the debate we're having with Punguza Mzigo, BBI, and Ugatuzi.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the debate. Because certain things, people would like certain things to work in a certain way, and they don't. So what do? Bring about the change. And the only way you do this in these countries through a referendum.
Indeed. So,
Tedious process, but there is a way of doing it.
so the
And that
country,
same Constitution provides that way out.
the country seems to be geared towards a referendum sometime before 2022 or maybe in 2022. And among the things that have been proposed is creation of a Prime Minister's position. This is separating state and government, creating a head of state who's separate from a head of government. And there has been talk previously that, President Uhuru Kenyatta is still a young man. He's serving his second and final term under the current constitution. What if we usher in a new constitution that allows a prime minister to come in? Maybe President Uhuru Kenyatta can also, take up this position as prime minister. William Kabogo, the former governor of Kiambu, was on TG's show last night, KTN's Point Blank, and he said, no, I think Uhuru should retire. He also says, I think Raila should retire, and maybe even William Ruto should retire from politics and not participate in 2022. What do you think about this? I think Raila, Ruto, it's okay. Uhuru, no. It's 24 minutes to 7 o'clock.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
All right, looking at the state of the roads in Nairobi this morning, Ngong Road is still clear, but it's predicted that things will change right about now, which is after 6:30. Mombasa Road from Shalom Hospital interchange towards Simba Cement, everything is moving along quite smoothly, heading in the general direction of General Motors. There's been an accident on the Eastern Bypass next to Tuskys, and it is going to cause some traffic as people are using that route to get towards the Cabanas stage. And it all come together on Mombasa Road, as is the case. Namanga Road at Kitengela traffic is flowing smoothly. Again, looking at what will be the situation on Mombasa Road. All right, Wayaki Way, because of the opening of number 87, we see there's not going to be much of an issue this morning with traffic right now. The situation is going to change in a few minutes, though, getting round about to 7 o'clock. There's traffic in my mouth. The Thika Superhighway is smooth at this moment, and that could change also in just a short while. So nothing major going on at the moment. It's likely to change in about half an hour, but we'll keep you updated. You call us or give us a note as to what we could share information about. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
At 20 minutes to 7 o'clock, good morning. This is the Situation Room. Hashtag Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have CT Muga, Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko, and I'm Eric Latif. We are also streaming live on Facebook, www.spicefm.co.ke, on our website, www.spice... Oh, that's our website.
Yes.
Spicefm.co.ke. Facebook, it's
Yes.
Spice FM KE on Facebook, and on YouTube, it's Spice FM KE. Around the country, we are in Nairobi on 94.4. We are in Mombasa, 87.9. In Kisumu, 102.5. Nakuru, 96.0. Eldoret, 96.7. 90.9 in Nyeri, and 97.6 in Malindi. So the conversation we're having this hour is regarding the possibility of amending the constitution and creating a system of government that has a head of state and head of government. And there has been talk in the past, well, in this second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, that, well, he's young, he's still energetic, still has a lot to offer this country. And should he just retire and go home and stay after he serves his second term in office? Or should we have him come back and serve the country in a different capacity at the top level of Kenya's government? Well, this talk has also gone to a point where some people are saying that the initiative to amend the constitution and separate head of state and head of government is so we can have, Uhuru Kenyatta coming in as the head of government, that's a prime minister's position, and maybe somebody else coming in as a president at the presidential level, and, so that we can have Uhuru Kenyatta continuing to serve. William Kabogo was on Point Blank yesterday, KTN show, and he was interviewed by Tony Gashoka, and he said, you know what, I think the BBI move could be a move to create this position. There's that general feeling. Maybe Raila, Uhuru, and maybe Ruto should all not participate in the 2022 election. That cements the Building Bridges initiative. However, I'm not even focusing so much on the Building Bridges initiative. I am focusing on the president and whether he has served Kenya enough by serving 2 terms at the head of state and head of government. And I say yes. If we have a situation where President Uhuru Kenyatta comes in as a prime minister in 2022 in any other year, it will be akin to extending his term of office as executive. And I think that should not be right.
The former governor of Kiambu, if I get it right, is a tad older than both the deputy president and the president. So when he talks about other people retiring, what does he say of himself?
He is retired.
He isn't retired.
Has he retired?
He is quite active in politics.
Yes,
You can see
even what we're discussing here, his utterances, they don't speak of retirement. They speak of someone who's trying to re-engineer, come back, giving advice to his community of what they should do, saying this. He seems fitted for the role that he is asking other people to take up. Why doesn't he become an elder statesman and do the things that he's saying? Why is he suggesting that other people should do it?
You see, he hasn't said that if I serve 2 terms as governor, I can extend.
I'm actually not going there. Elder statements, I've jumped all that. I've come to father of the nation and people who give advice. He's already giving advice anyway. He's always giving advice. So why doesn't he just take over that role and show us how this advice giving is done? And see how many people actually listen to him. There's a point I'm getting at here. This prescription culture that Kenyans have of thinking that we all know how best people should conduct themselves when they're in position of authority. He was governor. How much of the things that he's saying that people ought to do did he do? He was governor, 5 years. Eric, I'm asking you the question.
I think it's... Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I'm just looking at you because I'm wondering, so what are you asking me?
I'm saying,
How much of what did he do? How
Look.
much of his work did he do?
how much of it, you see, he's prescribing. He's saying that when people do this and they get to this position, they should do this. That's what he's saying. He's prescribing, okay? He didn't get a second term as governor, but he was a one-term governor. Now, what is this thing that Mr. Kabogo has done for the people of Kiambu? Now that he's no longer governor, and by his utterances, he is in the position of advisor. What is this thing that he has done for the people of Kiambu that an advisory role would make possible? What is it? I'm asking this so that we can say that given that he has done this, he's in a good position to advise people who are in even higher offices.
What gives him the legitimacy to come on national TV and tell us this, and then we're here sort of expounding on his narrative
of what? Yes.
In what capacity is he telling us these things? As who?
As a Kenyan
who had a one-term.
I am raising this topic as well as a Kenyan, not because I've been head of state or I've been governor or I've been head of a cattle dip, but as a Kenyan and as a Kenyan voter. Right?
Eric, your role here is clear.
As somebody who also thinks that, yes, once you've served as president for 2 terms. And it's very clear, and you've also said that, yes, I have served as president for 2 terms. And I agree with what we all set out to do and said, that once you've served at an executive position for 2 terms, do not extend it. As chief executive of the country, that's president, and chief executive of county, that's governor. Do not extend it to a 3rd term in any other way, form, or don't bring it through the back door.
Eric, what I'm saying is
don't amend the constitution to extend the term.
Eric, what I'm saying is this. This is a complete waste of our time. You are here telling us, prescribing for us things that ought to be done. We have people in this country who are starving. We have situations where children don't have proper. As a former leader, why are you telling us things that electorate will take care of come 2022?
What's interesting also is how even this debate here in the studio is being framed, because we're now discussing, should he come back or not? Will he want to come back? Is he coming back? And in this discussion, what we do is we start to put aside the discussion that we should be having, which is whether we should have a parliamentary system or not. But what bringing this to the fore and making this the dominant discourse does, it's making the audience think that in voting for a parliamentary system, you are bringing Uhuru back.
Yes.
It's a very dangerous, very intelligent, well-curated narrative, and I can see it coming from those who would oppose a parliamentary system, because now the parliamentary system will be associated completely with Uhuru coming back to power.
Oh,
it gives him the right to, as any Kenyan citizen, but it's not saying that he will. But when we tie this debate, and when the dominant discourse, as I say, becomes about whether he should come back or whether he should be allowed to come back to power, then we miss the point here. We're framing this incorrectly and leaving out the most important debate here, which is, will a parliamentary system serve us better as Kenyans than our current presidential system? And if we look at that and we look at the merits of a parliamentary system, we see how it has helped countries which are multi-ethnic, whereby power can be shared more equitably or more equally amongst more communities, the idea of inclusivity. And as Raila himself said, there's been an ongoing debate about this. He talks about the fact that this will actually ease the tensions that we see every 5 years during the election cycles. Now, this is the debate we should be having, not that, well, do you know, and it's a completely wrong proposition. It's a false premise to build an argument on, because when you say, do you know, if you bring this in, there is the possibility of Uhuru coming back? Yes, absolutely. But that's not what we're going to focus on. Whereas when you start discussing this, should Uhuru come back? Should he be allowed back? Will he be allowed back? Then people start to think that's all that this constitution, if it's amended to include a presidential system, a parliamentary system, people start to think that's where we're headed. And we have to be very careful not to misinform the citizenry. And I can't help but think that the way this argument is being curated for Kabogo to come on and talk about this, he has an agenda.
Or does he think he's the one who ought to actually take over such a position when everybody else who could take up that position is out of the way?
Well, definitely what you do is that you put yourself in a position to be the person that people would look to in the event that a vacuum has been created. When you actually put forth that argument, then people say, if then it was not X, then it should be me. Because that's what you do. You clear the path and then you set yourself really there as the sun for the center of attention. I mean, I don't think that he was called upon to give a random interview. Definitely it was something that was well orchestrated for him to be the one to say that first start with this individual should not come back into active politics come 2022.
Why him?
Exactly.
I mean, again,
and as who?
As
yes.
whom?
That is the question. First of all, he is more... He has less legitimacy than, say, myself, because he was actually voted out. We don't want you was the message. So who is he? Why is he coming back to tell us anything?
Again,
in what capacity?
Putting attention.
Again, the other wrong premise. Now they're talking about wrong premises. Is the other wrong premise is discussing the person that has raised talk about the issue that is being raised.
No, you
No.
can talk about
Talking about
both.
the person
no, no, no,
as well
no.
that has raised
no.
this.
You can talk about both. You know,
Yeah,
the
because
messenger in politics is
The issue,
crucial.
the issue,
because
the
here-
issue is
because
tied in
here-
with the person who brought it up.
It's not
Absolutely.
the
You
only
can-
person who's brought it up. Let's talk about Atwali as well. Atwali has already said this. Atwali has said Uhuru should not retire.
These seem to be people
As we-
who
are
are,
we saying
who
that?
are allied
Let's
to
talk about
those
the
that
other
are
people who have
against-
said it.
Yes, and they
And
seem
we are not
to
going
be
to talk about everybody else who has talked about
no,
it.
you,
Because there are
you've
very
got,
many other people who have
you've got
said
to be
it.
very naive, Eric. In politics,
we are
listen to
pegging
me.
this. We are pegging this on the fact that it has actually been said. Kabogo has said it publicly. He's not the only one.
Yes,
he's not the
and
first
I
person
am
who have
saying
said it.
to you.
And the other people who have said it before, you have not raised it.
No, we haven't, because you didn't mention them.
No, I'm
you,
just saying-
you mentioned the article,
Because it's
and in
recent.
mentioning the article,
And the only reason I'm mentioning
the
him is because it's
excellency
reason. I'm just
former governor of
quoting it.
Kiambu came to the fore. So he is the one whom we will discuss. If you want us to discuss Atwoli, we will also discuss
No,
Atwoli.
I want us to discuss the
No,
topic.
What I'm saying is
And
you've
the
got
issue
to be
here,
very, very
the issue
politically.
the issue at hand is we have a president who is serving.
We have
his
heard you
final
loud and
term.
clear, Eric. That's
Let-
fine.
you-
What I am
you
saying
have heard me,
is
but
you
you have
can't
not understood
ignore.
me.
I have
There's a
understood you, my
difference.
darling.
You
Don't
have not
doubt my
understood
cognitive
me.
capacity.
From
please.
what you, from
No,
how
no,
you're
no, no, no,
responding,
no, no.
you have
No,
not
I am.
understood my question.
No, I have completely understood you.
I have
That's
the
why we've
marking
been talking
scheme.
about
I have
it.
the
But
marking
you,
scheme, and I am
you have
telling
got
you,
to
I
be
am marking you
politically
wrong because you have not
okay.
understood
Now
the question.
keep quiet and listen to what I'm saying. You've got to be politically naive to ignore the messenger in politics. It tells you everything. And in this case, what I'm trying to say is the people who are speaking like this it's a brigade that is building up that is against the possibility of a new constitution. That is what we need to look at. It's important you look at who is saying something, because then you look at the reason why they're saying it. Then you can give it merit or credit or decredit it. And you can, the veracity of it comes into question depending on who is saying it.
All
So
right,
in politics,
let's talk about
you
why
can
he's
know,
saying it,
you
not
cannot.
who he is, not why
You
or what
cannot.
gives him the right.
Well, we can talk about that too. You're not going to limit what discussions are going to be had.
But you're not going to limit it also to what you want to have.
Actually,
I'm not.
I've raised
I'm
the question.
opening
I'm
it.
saying let's
Actually,
just-
I'm
Jerry,
not
actually,
limiting the
Jerry,
discussion
actually,
at all.
Jerry, this is the beauty of democracy. You can. Everything here is possible. We can limit it to discussing personalities.
We can
If that's
expand
what
it.
I want, we can expand it. We can expunge it. Look,
I think, yeah.
this is a political debate. And the debate isn't taking place in a vacuum. You're talking about someone who's held a position of authority, a very high position of authority. So this is a person who isn't a nobody.
And you have to look at the community he's coming
Coming
from.
from,
You
yes.
cannot ignore who
Yes.
the person
He
is.
represents-
It speaks volumes on
Yes.
so many levels. There's layers to this. So are we looking at this as the next Kikuyu leader, so he's going to guide us? Because that's the nature of our politics.
What do you
We
think?
have a leader and they guide blocks and people listen to somebody. That is the very nature of Kenyan politics. So the person saying things, it's crucial. If it was somebody else saying this, I might not give it as much weight. But here, what are you doing? Are you going on to the Ruto divide of Central? There's so much more to these intrigues. It's very dynamic. You've got to look at who is saying it. Yes, the
And
issue
what
at
do you
hand
see?
to
When you-
me.
okay, now when you look
The,
at
the
it, what do
issue,
you see?
the issue. Let's go to the issue now. That's what I want to discuss, not who is saying it. I've told you why it's important as to who is saying it. Let's look at the issue at hand. And he's completely misframed this. The issue at hand is not whether Uhuru or Ruto or Raila should come back. The issue at hand is, will this amendment in the Constitution serve us better as Kenyans? So what he's doing, I say again, is misleading, misinforming Kenyans by framing this debate, and you're giving him a platform to further amplify that. The debate should not be, will Uhuru come back? Yes, the Constitution allows Uhuru to come back. It doesn't mean he will or he wants to, but that is not what we should be discussing. What we should be discussing is, will this Constitution, or rather the amendment in the Constitution, serve us better as Kenyans and enhance our democracy?
You were saying something at some point.
I think what we need to see very clearly here is that, will a system bring in an individual, or will the focus be on the individual that has come in because of the propagation of the system itself? And we need to look at the reverse. So now, will people say this system or these suggestions for an amendment was a way to bring in a particular crop of individuals? And that has to be looked at and seen very clearly for what it could be. Now, are we looking at a system then that could benefit the country as a whole? And unfortunately, that's the way we operate just as human beings. Once you see somebody putting forth a particular argument, whether or not the merits of the system they're talking about are being taken into consideration basically gets thrown out the window, because what you do is then you say this person was brought in because such and such was amended. It was amended just so that there would be a provision for a particular individual to be brought in. And that is the way Kenyans would look at it. We need to be very careful also of the things that are said and the nuances behind all of it.
Why do Kenyans say that?
Because an
Is it
individual,
out of the blues? Is it are they saying it because it doesn't exist? Is it a figment of their imagination?
no, but it's
Now that we're talking about the political process, is it a figment of the imagination when people think, "Hey, why is this coming? Why are we going down this route?"
because once you place the possibility in their foresight, you've placed it there. Whether it was something that they were considering or not, you've placed it there. And so they begin to think around that particular narrative. They begin to think, oh, okay, this particular system that we're trying to bring in by amending the Constitution, we're not looking at it as a point of view or what could benefit the people. We're looking at it then as a way in which, you've created room for, pre-existing individuals to come in to serve in government once again.
And this conversation has already happened. It's not starting this morning, or it didn't start last night. This conversation has already happened. What is the route that we are taking here? What are we doing? Are we creating positions for people? So just need to discuss.
Are we
what
creating positions for people?
For specific people.
Are we
for
creating positions for
individuals.
people, or are we trying to make it better for the people of the country?
Well, both go hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive, so to speak. If we scrutinize this further, yes, we are creating positions for people, but for to achieve the inclusivity that is much needed in this country, it's not for individuals themselves. It can be viewed as that, but how long will they last? Even with the new constitution, there'll still be limits as to their terms. So they're not going to do something just for them for a few years. It's something for the country, for the long term, and to ensure the inclusivity that is much needed in a multi-ethnic democracy such as Kenya.
We keep talking about constitutions as being living documents. But this is really the whole point. We started off by having a one-party state. We changed, we evolved. Multipartyism came in. The terms of the presidency was unlimited. That became limited. What we're hearing, what is happening is just part of that process. You had a system, a presidential system. We don't like it. We've seen what it does. It needs to be changed. And there is a theory of it and there's a reality of it. You cannot pretend that the dynamics of tribalism in this country does not
exist.
Yes, they have to be factored in. And that's what we call inclusivity. It has to be factored in. It has to be factored in when you're creating a parliamentary system. If you think this system that we have currently has proved not to be functional. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us. So
why should we be handcuffed to it? As
So,
you say,
and also we cannot. Yes, we must have these conversations. We must have the conversation on what institutions are serving Kenyans and what institutions are not serving Kenyans, and the reasons why they are not serving Kenyans also, right? Because we must also go to the root cause of exactly why do we feel that this is not serving us. Have we done everything that we needed to do to make sure that this serves us, or have we actually jumped 17 steps and gone towards the end without going through the process? Was it meant to be step by step, or was it meant to be wholesome? Also, we cannot ignore the fact that we have to talk about the individuals involved
This is true.
in it.
However, I
This
think...
is
we do? We have to talk about the individuals now,
is,
Eric?
we're
I
looking
thought it
at-
was just the issues.
The thing is now, here we are looking... We
let's
have...
welcome Eric in. He's converted.
We cannot
yes.
divorce
He's
us.
revised his position in light of new
yes,
evidence
yes,
from
yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Fantastic.
We
So
cannot-
let's talk about the individuals now. Uhuru Kenyatta.
What about him?
Jerry, not Jerry, Indu, you're saying we cannot?
About Uhuru Kenyatta?
No,
I
you-
wasn't talking about Uhuru Kenyatta.
We cannot.
I said that we cannot divorce ourselves from the fact that the personalities that play in politics in this country are very swaying to the citizenry as a whole. And it is very clear that people will say, or people will then come to arrive at the fact that amendments were made in the Constitution to provide a pathway for somebody to come in once again, as opposed to that amendment being for the betterment of the country. If we say, like Siti says, what we have does not work, and the reason why we want to amend the Constitution then is to have a system that works. However, because of the personalities that we have playing in our politics, The converse is seen, that we're just trying to create positions for people as opposed to doing something that will be better for the country as a whole. And when we're looking at the changes that we hope to be made, I think we need to be looking at it from that point of view, in terms of what will work, what it is that we will change that will work for this country, as opposed to what will benefit a few individuals. We need to look at the issues, and that's very clear.
So we need to focus on the issues. We also need to focus on the institutions that we are creating as a country and how well we are doing with this. Our telephone lines are always 0719-012-600 at 0719-012-600. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All right, Ngong Road is looking a little bit better now. Mombasa Road from Cabanas towards General Motors to Bellevue is literally bumper to bumper. It's not moving, and we don't have an outlet. People are entering into the South C and also trying to get round Capital Centre and go through South B, but it is a gridlock. Jogo Road also, it's a bumper to bumper situation. The heavy roads that have caused heavy rains are causing traffic on Thika Road, so people are moving slower. Definitely will affect traffic. That's what we have. Because of the rains, everything is moving a lot slower than normal. Langata Road, Ngong Road, Thika Road, Jogo Road, heading towards the city centre. We're going to have some issues this morning, especially because of the rain. Be patient. It'll get better. You see anything that you could use as an alternate, give us a call or send us a message. 0719-012-600. Let's keep you moving, even if it is raining.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Njeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning. How are you doing? The Situation Room is full house. Hashtag Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. Also, conversation is happening on our Facebook page at Spice FM KE. You can also comment on Twitter through our hashtag Situation Room on our handle Spice FM KE. And the conversation we're having this morning is regarding the anticipated referendum and creation of a system of a prime minister and separation of state and government and creation of a prime minister. And we've seen people who have said, Uhuru Kenyatta is a young man. He should be allowed to come and serve the country in different capacities.
Who has said this exactly? You've repeated this.
Atwoli has been quoted before as saying this. We have seen...
Atwoli has said that we should allow Uhuru back or we shouldn't?
No, he has said Uhuru is a young man. We should have him serve us again in different capacity. Right? You saw yesterday
I think that's rather alarmist of him. And
what Kabogo was saying yesterday, that he thinks that all of them should actually not participate in the 2022 election.
Why? Does he give any reasons why?
He does, if you read the paper. And that's...
Well, can you also tell us
that's
what
he's
he discussing?
So,
Eric,
you're derailing me as I introduce the topic.
Are you introducing the topic now? Are we discussing the topic?
We are discussing
what I want. Why does he say? Why is it a discussion? Or
Eric
I don't mean to.
I'm recapping
Right.
the topic.
Okay.
Jerry, right. So,
so I should keep quiet.
Yes.
Okay. Understood.
Just let me finish recapping.
Finish,
the
and
topic.
I'll make a note of the questions I'm going to ask.
And our telephone lines are 0719-012-600. We'd like to also join you in this conversation. We'd love to hear what you think about this. Jerry, you were asking a couple of clarifications.
I was saying, does Kabogo say why he doesn't want Raila or Uhuru to be on the ballot?
Kabogo's premise basically is that he's saying Raila and Uhuru have done something good for the country. They did a handshake last year, which was building bridges. They have brought peace. They've changed the narrative of the country politically in this current dispensation that we have. He's saying that we are seeing now, we are discussing the BBI and amending the constitution and discussing the merits and demerits of breaking down, splitting between head of state and head of government. Now, being very powerful and very influential leaders in our politics, he thinks because the last time we were having this particular contest was because the two of them were competing against one another. What if they step aside and allow other people to come in? So they become like, we have ushered you into this new dispensation, and so that you don't see like it's us. We actually say that this time in 2022, we are not participating in this election. So let's usher you into a new dispensation where we think we have built bridges, we have actually opened up a new bridge.
So he's telling them, because you've done the country some good, now leave us be, in essence.
Yes. He's basically saying, I fear that if we go into another election with you two gentlemen, we may just reverse.
Right.
We may reset and go back to 2017.
Right.
However, if you gentlemen do not participate, you'll actually usher in the BBI.
So perhaps what he's suggesting is the process would be less political or politicized.
Yes.
If you're not involved in the process. Okay, interesting. I think what we really need to be discussing, the debate here should be, there was an article I read out yesterday whereby Yashpal Ghai and I think Abdi Kader had suggested that we don't need a constitutional amendment, i.e. we don't need a referendum. What we need to do is actually implement the constitution fully, and we will feel the full benefits of the constitution, which has the spirit of inclusivity as well. Now, that's one argument versus the other argument that actually no, even if fully and properly implemented, the constitution still fails to serve us as Kenyans, because first of all, the idea of inclusivity, I think the idea of the wage bill, the huge wage bill that is laden upon us with the devolution and the number of wards we have and MCAs and so on. That's the debate we really need to be having, not if we bring this constitution, Uhuru could come back. That's it's dangerous rhetoric for the electorate, because then we miss the point. We should be discussing, should we have a presidential or parliamentary system, or should we focus on actually implementing the constitution? Although even what Abdi Kader and Yashpal Ghai are suggesting, that we haven't fully implemented the constitution in terms of what we're looking to achieve from it, i.e. from the amendments, i.e. inclusivity, we have fully implemented what can be from there, other than maybe gender. That's what we should be discussing in terms of inclusivity. So those are the debates we should be having. When we start to personalize them and say, well, if we do bring in that parliamentary system, Uhuru could come back. That's, I would say, probably coming from the camp of those who wouldn't want any constitutional amendments. And it's very alarmist. It's rumor mongering, and you're scaring people, and you're reinforcing this idea of dynasties and power and so on, and wanting to create a thirst and an appetite for new leadership, i.e. Ruto, for instance. So for me, I'm seeing some mischief in some of these utterances. No?
The danger.
Open up the phone lines, 0719 012 600. Good morning. Yegon?
Good morning.
Yegon, long time. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Jerry. Siku mingi sana.
Yes, Yegon,
how is Wajir?
I'm good. Wajir is calm.
Calm.
Yes,
calm before the storm.
And proud as usual. Yeah.
Weigh in on this conversation.
I know this. The whole initiative is about bringing power to some people, or some people retaining power. There is nothing to do with Mwananchi. Why am I saying this? Is because look, I was seeing a proposal during the Anyang' Nyong'o launch, and we are requesting for a regional tier government. Why are we doing this when the other day we were struggling with the distribution of funds to our counties? Where will the funds come from? Now we are saying that we are running from wage bill to another big wage bill. So all the issue of constitution has been framed as bringing a peace in Kenya, but it's not about the it's about the few individuals.
I think
And-
that's the rhetoric that, of course, would come from the DP's camp, no doubt, as is clearly.
No. I don't want you to put in DP's camera.
No, it clearly is, because how else do you suggest we include all the communities in leadership? We have seen our mindset. We know how we think politically, socially, economically as Kenyans, as communities, and we've seen where the problem arises. It's the idea of we don't have our guy at the top. We keep having a Kikuyu or
Jerry,
Kalenjin. We know that's how Kenyans think. How else do you suggest? We've tried devolution and to decentralize power and give other communities leaders of their own in the form of a governor and give funds and so on. We've tried that. We still had tensions last year whereby almost half the population was not in support of the president. Is that representative of the population? Is that a democracy really, where just because you have 4% more, you rule the country fully?
Now, Jerry, out of the proposed constitution, we will have around,
Which we don't know yet, by the way. We're making a lot of assumptions. We haven't seen what the
Now,
feedback from
Jerry,
the ground is, which is what the BBI team is doing.
Let-
So we
let-
don't know what's coming out.
Let the man make his proposals.
He's building something on a false premise. We don't know
Let
what
him build on the false premise.
The discussion here is why are we including if Uhuru is to remain in power and become a prime minister? If we do, if the upcoming proposal doesn't have positions, let me tell you, the coming BPI will have around 5 senior positions. This is to do with the deputy president, president, prime minister, and deputy prime minister. How many communities do we have in Kenya? Now, back to Central Region, how many constituencies do they have? How many are in Nyanza? In the whole of Northeastern, for example, Wajir County, we have 4 constituencies. Now, even if we come to BPI, bring in Prime Minister who will be elected by the members of Parliament, there's still those who will win are the one with majority constituencies. And where does the region lies to? Now, we have heard that President Uhuru is young to retire. And he has been in record telling us, when it comes to 2022, I will shock you. Now, look at the Punguza bill. It starts from Kirinyaga. It was rejected. It came to Murang'a. The other day, it was Kiambu. Who is the initiator of this, the beginner in the central Kenya? Kirinyaga governor. What was the discussion during his, I don't know, was it pre-wedding or wedding ceremony?
I'm sure they have discussions outside that as well. It doesn't have to be.
So all these things is we are trying to make us, the leaders who are in the same arena still continue leading us. That's why at some point I can support Honorable Kapoko. Though Kapoko is another lonely wolf, he's alone. And he's looking where he can fit himself, because now he comes from Kiambu, and in Kiambu there's still another senior most politician. So the entire constitution is not about Mwananchi, because if it was about Mwananchi, we could first implement what we have.
Exactly.
But what we have in terms of governance structures,
It's not working.
I'm not saying everything has been implemented. I pointed out the 2/3 or 1/3 gender rule that's yet to be implemented. There's quite a bit that hasn't. But in terms of governance structures, it has been implemented. There might be some tidbits such as integrity and so on that we're still working with to tweak and make sure we implement it. But in terms of governance and the basic structures, we have implemented them, i.e. devolution. We have done all that. It is still not working. We had discussions and discourse around cessation at the end of 2017. Are we going to be doing this every 5 years? Should we not start to look for other avenues through which we can achieve this democracy that has an element of inclusivity that is much needed in a multi-ethnic democracy? Do you not think?
Jerry, what makes you say that devolution is not working?
Look at what happened at the end of 2017. It's our mindsets, to be honest, that we need to change, because people still feel that we need our guy at the helm of central government. We're not happy with having a governor, having devolved funds and working at county level, thinking at county level. We still have tensions in the country when it comes to the leadership, because people feel, actually, I want my guy at the helm of power. Now, unless we set out to change this mindset, the only way is to actually change the constitution, whereby we ensure that everybody's guy is at the helm. So you have more positions. Now you're going to say, but you can't cater for everybody. But you cater, I won't say the major tribes because that sounds politically incorrect, but it is what it is. You cater for the tribes that have the most tension, which is the Kikuyus, the Kalenjins, and the Luos. And everybody comes in with those, and there's 4 positions, and if you think about it, within another 4 years you can give somebody else another 10. I'm not saying it should be rotational per se, but then within another 4 years you give another community. So you find in 16 years you've given 16 different communities. Whereas now it could actually, theoretically, do you know you could have a Kikuyu presidency for the next, given the demographics, you could have a Kikuyu presidency for the next 100 years. All the Kikuyu need to do is find a community to back them, and every election they will win. Now there's a natural sense of injustice in that sort of democracy. So when we adopt this one-size-fits-all democracy and just say the majority, it doesn't work for us. We have different, we have tribes, we have history, so we have to contextualize the democracy to fit us, and this is what we're trying to do. The Constitution, as CT clearly said, it's a living document. It needs to be fluid. You know, law is made for the man, not man made for the law. We've got to work with that, and it's okay to tweak the law. Why should we be handcuffed to it?
We've lost Yegon. I'm sure you're still listening in, Yegon, and thank you very much for calling in this morning from Wajir. We wish you a very good day in Wajir. I think we need to switch gears into the next conversation now, out of this commercial break. So as we conclude on this, we're saying the issues that we are discussing here are we are going into a new constitutional dispensation. We are talking about amending the constitution. From the way it has come out, well, we have the BBI initiative, we have the Ugatuzi initiative, we have the Punguza Mizigo initiative. All these ones are talking about, let's amend this constitution. So, okay, let's even not talk about whether it's time to amend the constitution or not. Even if we amend the constitution, if we go into the next election and we usher in a new system of government with a separating head of state and government, then what is it that we shall be looking at? And Jerry, you've articulated what you think a parliamentary system of government is going to help us with. Ndu, what is your thought on that? I
think the danger of personalization of these processes, we forget that the majority of the people who will eventually go to vote in a change in government through referendum per se probably do not understand what it is that we would actually be changing. And I think that is what we need to focus on in terms of really spreading the information, sharing the information of, okay, have we looked at a system right now that does not work? What is it that we could change? When people go and put their hand to ballots, do they actually understand this is what we are voting in? Do we know that this is essentially what we're changing in terms of how the process is changed when government is actually setting laws into place? Do we realize that an entire system is changing? The danger of personalization takes away that aspect of information sharing. And like I said, we need to focus on the issue. If we are changing basically the structures of government, the people who are voting in this change, do we understand what it means? Has information been shared adequately?
And the debate goes on.
It continues.
It continues. And I'm sure the people will wade in and have their 2 minutes worth of advice for Kenyans and for leaders. And when they bring those views, we will discuss them.
A political process is actually an everybody's process. Everybody participates in it because people are voters or people are candidates. And everybody who has a thought should bring forth their thought. You should discuss it at whatever level, local level or at national level if you've got the platform. But the conversation continues, as the CT says. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, 18 minutes past 7 o'clock.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelogue. Travelogue is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 Mombasa. In Kisumu, we are on 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.6 in Malindi. We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and of course on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm Eric Latif. We have in the room CT Muga, Ndu Oko, and Jerry Thorne. Something interesting is happening in America.
Something even more interesting is happening in the UK. And something even more interesting is happening on the planet.
Right.
Yes.
Where do you want to start?
We live in interesting times. I want to look at what is happening in the US, what is happening in the UK, and then I want to look at how actually this reflects on what's happening in this country and in our region. There's a word that has been in our lips and in the media continuously, and that's the word impeachment. I actually had to look it up to understand it, because what I thought it was and what it actually is are two very different things. I actually thought that when an impeachment process began, someone is heading to jail very quickly. And lo and behold, to my surprise, impeachment is very far away from what I thought. It simply means that there is evidence that some law has been broken, and a process to determine whether indeed it was actually broken has begun. That's really what impeachment. In a criminal situation, it will be called an indictment, okay? But it heralds that process, meaning there's ample evidence to provide that movement in that direction. The thing about the US, this is the third time in the history of that country that this sort of debate is taking place. The first one was in 1868. The other century, okay? And there was a president by the name of Andrew Johnson, okay? But he was the 17th president then. He wasn't the first president. Okay, he never left office. The next time we heard it was in the 19th century. A gentleman by the name of Richard Nixon. Now, Richard Nixon was clever enough. He actually decided to sort of like leave office before this thing went further. And the gentleman who was his vice president who took over, a gentleman called Johnson, yet again, actually pardoned him. Then came in a gentleman by the name of Clinton, Bill Clinton, well known.
I did not have sexual relations.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't. I mean, by his definition and by every definition, he didn't. And remember, Clinton was the first 42nd president of the United States, and this was 1998. Now, we now have the discussion yet again. And this one is based on something very interesting. It's based on communication that is supposed to have taken place between the president and another president of a different country. But the content of that communication, which was brought to the fore by someone called a whistleblower, that's not his name, the terminology you use for people who bring out such sensitive issues to the fore. Because of the whistleblower and because of the content, an illegality is claimed to have taken place. And it is this illegality that has brought about the discussion of impeachment that now faces the president. And it's an ongoing debate. Now, in the UK, we had Brexit. Parliament was prorogued. This matter went to court. The High Court in Scotland said, this thing, you are not right. The Prime Minister said, no, I'm taking this to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had their day. And they said, actually, that proroguement of Parliament was illegal. They took it even further. They even said, actually, the powers to do the things that the Prime Minister did. Remember, the Prime Minister actually is a minister. just the prime of the ministers, that power actually rests with Parliament. But what is most interesting about the UK is, remember, you're talking about a country that actually doesn't have a written down constitution. So all these things that we're discussing are within that context.
Right.
But how does this relate to Kenya? We have a situation where we also have a new constitution. How is it actually written? And one of the things that is written in our constitution is we created something called devolution. And with the devolution came something that, well, people say it's a mixed bag of goodies. But that it's a good thing, most people agree. The details people disagree on. But the thing that is of interest with our constitution is it brings forth discussions that we've never had before. They're new discussions. So sometimes even as we discuss them, we're not really sure. But at the core of it, and where it relates to Brexit, is the presidency. The parliamentary leader within the British system had issues with this. The opposition had issues. The minister, the prime minister, advised the Queen. And there are those who said he misadvised the Queen. Mm-hmm. In this country, many of the problems that we have, people say that the president has been misadvised. Some say the deputy has been misadvised. Some say the deputy is misadvising. These are the details we want to look at. What is it within our country that constitutionally we understand because they're meant for the benefit of the people, but yet the turn of events and the implementation of it, it turns out to be something that I'm certain was not intended. Yes. That is what I want to bring to the fore.
Sort of touching on what Eric was talking about, Eric and Du were talking about earlier, as to whether we're upholding the spirit of the Constitution. Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying that there's an attempt. Everything that we see, the debates around it, these are attempts. People are trying. They're trying. Understanding it. Remember recently we had a situation where we had the Speaker of the Assembly in Kisumu County. That gentleman was removed. Impeachment. Okay? It was said he had a case in court. But more importantly, people now started questioning his leadership. He was even replaced. We had something similar attempted in Embu. They tried to get the governor out. They really tried. They really tried. Didn't really work out. Okay? But I sometimes think that impeachment is created within the law to ensure that whoever's in leadership understands that they're not above the law. That you can actually be removed. The process may be tedious, but there's that understanding. Njeri, the question you asked, recently, I'm going to answer it by giving an example. Recently, we had a situation where the papers were replete with people demonstrating in Mombasa about the SGR. Okay, and what they were saying was that the CFSs rather, had been shut down. Now, CFSs are bonded warehouses, to put it in layman terms. It's a holding place where containers stay. When they're cleared, then they leave. And these were created because, for instance, the port itself doesn't have that capacity.
Right.
So now you have a situation where CFSs no longer hold cargo. Cargo is supposed to come to Nairobi. And when they come to Nairobi, what the capacity that the government has, once again, cannot hold these. So they have to be taken to other warehouses, which are not necessarily bonded warehouses. So by the time you clear them, remember, there's a process. You load the cargo of the container, you bring it, you offload it, you load it out again, and once the goods are offloaded, the container has to go back. Now, what this creates is a double pricing system.
Right.
You actually end up raising the cost of whatever it is that you're doing and whatever it is you're supplying. And so the end user, who is you and I, ends up being the consumer and the bearer of this particular burden on top of the burdens we already bear of taxation. So the question I would ask is, who advises the president on these things? Because the president who made this announcement, and presidents don't make announcements unless they're advised. When you have people who do not look at the whole picture and understand that this thing was actually set up for a specific purpose and it was intended to actually make things work better, and then you make such a decision, the president looks bad, but he was advised. We've actually gone back, not forward. And the burden that the country already faces is actually going to increase.
And the weight of the burden gets even heavier because then those who are in an advisory role or an advisory capacity around the president really don't know the extent to which the damage that their inaction or that their wrong advice is actually pushing the country in a downward spiral.
Yes.
We don't realize that our actions actually are quite far-reaching, especially when it comes to advising the president or advising somebody in an executive role or capacity in the wrong direction. We've not taken the whole picture into consideration, and we see this happening time and time and time again. And the thing is that, as we've seen clearly, it is not peculiar to us in Kenya or us in Africa. It happens all the time around the world, around the globe. We've seen examples of this just from the examples that you've given of what is happening currently in the UK. And for us to not see the full picture is actually to our detriment, especially for those who would say are at the helm of power or surround those who are at the helm of power. Not seeing the full picture is not something that plagues the layman or the man on the ground. It's something that even plagues those we would even look up to, who would then essentially rule this country.
Do you know why this issue in America is becoming an issue? Because the whistleblowers are people who the president appointed. They were his appointees. And it surrounds an issue. It's an issue involving the Ukraine, okay, and the presidents. And it started back even the previous government. Now, there's a gentleman called Biden, whose son apparently was an executive or a board member in some very well-paying position in some oil energy company in the Ukraine. Now, it is being said that the current president actually asked the president of the Ukraine to look into a little matter for him, the participation of Biden's son in this thing, okay? But what now muddied the waters was that there was some aid that was supposed to go to the Ukraine, and this was withheld as a bargaining chip as to, okay, it's like, give me this information and I give you this. Now, all this, when looked at, was saying, but this doesn't seem to go, it goes against the grain of the law. So something is amiss here. Now remember, the whistleblower is someone who was a Trump appointee, not somebody who is in the opposition, not someone who's in labor, someone who was part and parcel. So what did this person see that made him feel, no, this is wrong, and perhaps, so processes have gone through to the point where they said, you have to reveal this. Now, the issue even gets murkier. It's now gone into the issue of Russia and what Russia did in the last election of the American. It's getting murkier and murkier and murkier.
And of course, it weighs in on the current situation where they are in the middle of a campaign.
Yes.
So the Democratic Party, and that's where Joe Biden is seeking the
for the Democratic,
the ticket for the Democratic Party, and of course, Trump keeps dismissing him as Sleepy Joe. When Trump is going around the campaign, actually, he's still, talking tough, his usual self, and he's saying a lot of things. And this is one of those stories and packages that was done by Al Jazeera. Listen to it.
As he campaigns for re-election, President Trump feeds off the energy of his supporters, who show up at his rallies in thousands.
Under this administration, America is working again. America is winning again, and America is respected again, like it hasn't been for a long time.
But now the president faces a new challenge, an impeachment inquiry led by House Democrats. It is in part over Trump's efforts in a phone call to pressure Ukraine's president to investigate the son of his political rival, Joe Biden. A transcript of the call was released by the White House on Wednesday. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
Well, Nancy Pelosi says no one is above the law. The president is campaigning, saying America is great again, America is respected again, and the process has begun, and that's what C.T. Muga is telling us this morning. That clip was actually done by VOA, I beg your pardon, it's by VOA. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation at 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. We are continuing with our conversation right out of this, taking a look at traffic, but the conversation that C.T. Muga is saying is, look at what is happening in the USA, look at what is happening in the UK, look at what is happening in other countries, and let's bring it down into our country and the situations that we see in our country, right?
Yes, and I'm saying, look at something that even looks innocuous, and look at where it leads, impeachment. People are saying now, Prime Minister Johnson must step down, but he's saying, I will not board.
I am not boarding. This is a Situation Room, 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Keep it right
Yes.
here.
96.0 Spice FM, Nakuru.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Looking at the situation in Mombasa, actually, this morning we have some news coming in that Mombasa is impassable. I don't know if it's the whole of the city, but major roads in Mombasa have quite a lot of traffic this morning. All right, Thika Road traffic in Nairobi is quite the bumper-to-bumper situation. Traffic is moving very slowly. Hopefully, the boys in blue will help to dissipate that area and get people moving as we're trying to access the CBD. Limuru Road, just before Village Market, there's overlapping and it has gotten to an overwhelming situation where people have started to be arrested. Thika Road next to Allsops, it's raining, so the jam is quite crazy. Crazy traffic on Limuru Road all the way from Ruaraka, and we see that coming into the road leading to the CBD. So there's rain everywhere, and this has affected Ngong Road. This has affected Langata Road. It has affected Wayaki Way, all leading to the CBD. The rain is going to slow us down this morning, so that is what we have currently. We just have to wait it out, folks. We hope it'll get better and you'll get where you're going. Give us a call or send us a message at 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. You're with me, Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, Jerry Thorne, C.T. Muga are in the Situation Room this morning. We're having a conversation around what's happening in the world. So just before we went to the break, we played the clip of, Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi and, the impeachment proceedings, whether they're going to commence or investigations commencing, heading towards an impeachment route for Donald Trump and what he is being accused of doing with regards to the Ukraine. Across the pond in the UK, something also happened, CT. And this is regarding Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister.
This matter began with him proroguing Parliament. People went to court. He was taken to court. And the court that held its brief in Scotland said that whatever Johnson had done was unlawful. So they took the matter up to the Supreme Court, and the people who had taken him to court also went to the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court ruled in the same manner that the lower court had ruled. And they said, the process of proroguing Parliament was not lawful.
And the judges actually delivered that ruling in a very, clear manner.
Actually, it was interesting to listen to because they actually took into account. It was an extremely comprehensive ruling. What they looked at, what they based it on, what they premised it on, how they structured it, and how it was brought forth. It was done in a very clear and easy to understand manner.
Let's listen to a compressed version of what they said.
Okay.
The court is bound to conclude, therefore, that the decision to advise Her Majesty to prorogue Parliament was unlawful because it had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification. The second question, therefore, is what are the limits to that power? Parliament has not been prorogued. This is the unanimous judgment of all 11 justices. It is for Parliament, and in particular the Speaker and the Lord Speaker, to decide what to do next. Not do that because the prorogation was a, quote, this was not a normal prorogation in the run-up to a Queen's speech. It prevented Parliament from carrying out its constitutional role for 5 out of the possible 8 weeks between the end of the summer recess and exit day on the 31st of October.
Well, in this country, there was a surprise after the election in 2017. We had matters that also went to the Supreme Court. And the net result of that particular case that went to the Supreme Court is we had a re-election. Now, it may seem like a one-off event, just like the impeachment processes for the Speaker of the Kisumu County Assembly may seem like a lone event, or the attempts by the Assembly of the Embu County to impeach their governor as a lonely event. No, these are warning signs for anyone who's in a position of power, including the president, to understand that these things can happen. If they can happen there, it can happen to you. If it's happening at the level of the international scene and it's happening to first world countries, as we call them, it can certainly happen. And it happens because someone advises you. Someone tells you to take a path. Someone tells you to make a decision, to announce it. Someone tells you to follow a certain process. And that process turns out to be taken to court. And when you have courts that are independent and they actually exercise that independent process, one can find themselves in a position that they had never hoped or never planned to be in, but they can be in. And part of the reason is because one failed to understand that the very function of the political process we have is for the people of the country. It's intended to benefit. And when it doesn't, then at some point, somebody will call out these people who are supposed to be benefiting the individuals.
In the case, if we look at Kenya, if we bring it home and we talk about the fact that, proceedings of impeachment could now, start to roll out in countries like the US or the UK. If we're looking at Kenya and saying, if we vote on what we want to call the Argai system, or if we want to vote in people who are like us or who we think that are going to go into government and fulfill our particular agenda, do we then see that it would be easy or difficult to actually begin impeachment proceedings if we see an individual has been in a situation whereby, for example, they have frustrated and prevented Parliament or government from conducting its functions as is, put forth by the law? Because that's what we say, that's what the grounds for impeachment are. When you prevent government from doing its job, you, the individual who prevented the government from doing its job, then we can start to bring, the process of impeachment against you. Now, if these are the individuals who we've essentially brought in our guy, or we rally around our guy, as it were, and we are the ones who are the advisors, don't you think we would be muddying the waters? Or there would be some kind of conflict of interest then, again, if we see that we would now begin proceedings of impeachment here, Kenya, local?
Once that mindset sets in, even situations that are caused by natural occurrences like the weather, people won't look into it. People who are in the tea producing sector right now are up in arms. Why? Things aren't working well.
Right.
The government doesn't control the weather. No, it doesn't. And if those natural causes...
Even though they would like to get people to think that they do.
But they don't. But there are certain things that they do, okay? I'm going back to this matter of taxation. there must be some clear thinking behind some of the things the government does, and there must be some clear thinking behind the decisions KRA makes. But I have to ask the question, these things that they do, what are they supposed to achieve? When you impose a certain regime, when you impose a certain way of doing things, what do you expect the end result to be? The example I gave, for instance, of the CFSs, okay? Indeed, we have a railway that has a problem in that it costs us so much money, we're having problems doing what? Paying back.
Not even paying back. Sorry.
No, please.
I interject.
Even
Yes,
maintaining.
yes.
Paying the maintenance for it
Maintaining.
is
yeah.
is a
Yes.
problem.
So the question you want to ask is, how did this arise? Because of cost overruns, isn't it? Now, the railway didn't cost itself, it didn't build itself. People did. And we know what it is supposed to cost. It didn't. That's why I'm referring to it politely as cost overruns. Now, the citizenry of Kenya didn't take that money. Some people did. So you're taxing people to pay for something they didn't take. It was a service intended to help them. Why didn't you just look for those people who took the money and get the money from them? Because someone must have taken the money.
Oh, sure.
Okay? Now, you then have a situation where now you put in place something that's supposed to rectify it, but will it really? What you then have is an entire citizenry up in arms against you who didn't need to be. Now, I am saying that...
Had you done your job?
Yes. These small things
So
that...
small things
yes,
could lead up to.
they look like they are not important, but believe me, they are fodder from which a lot can be fermented. And these are the things that I'm saying one needs to be careful about. And Jerry, you want to say something?
No, it's interesting, Du's point of the fact that we vote for our very own, the idea of having our person. So with then the instrument of impeachment to keep them accountable, is there a conflict there? Because we want our guy there, yet we're not going to, we want him to be accountable, but we're not going to impeach him.
There will be no punitive measures if they do
I
something
think
wrong.
you'll find there's a lot less of that with devolution. So most county governors, for instance, it's a Kikuyu area, he's a Kikuyu governor. So the idea of tribe is beginning to wash away when it comes to accountability. If it was two different tribes, say, I think the Rift Valley is a melting point. So somewhere like Nakuru, where the governor is Kikuyu and the deputy governor is Kalenjin, for instance, I'm sure there, if you're looking to impeach the deputy governor, if you could do that, but if you were looking to do that, then maybe you would have people coming in and claiming this is our guy. But generally speaking, across the country, the different counties do have a governor that is representative mainly of the tribe within that county. So another instance where devolution is actually working to counter some of the ills of tribalism, i.e. protecting our guy to the extent that he can actually steal from us and not be accountable because he's our tribe. So an example of devolution working quite well and taking into account that they are tribes.
Do the other institutions of government also ensure or protect the process of of impeachment, for instance? So if you're talking about, like, if you take the case of devolution, a governor, the impeachment starts at the county assembly and then it goes, of course, to the Senate. And after that, the impeachment holds, or then you go and appeal through the court process. Are institutions strong enough to ensure that the process of impeachment goes to its logical conclusion? And logical conclusion is not necessarily saying that the person is impeached, but we've gone to the very end and said, no, there's nothing that warrants impeachment or not.
We have. You see...
The institutions are there. Sorry, CJ,
Go ahead.
on. The institutions are there, but you have to remember these institutions operate with people in them. Now, that's where, there's scope for compromise, because you'll have either MCAs, if it's at county level, MCAs being paid not to pass a vote of no confidence, for instance. So then it becomes, I don't think it's tribally based, though, but it becomes now money and paying out and bribing and so on. So we're talking about whether people are above the law or not.
Yep.
And I think if you're rich, you can be above the law here as a governor, because you can pay people off not to impeach you. And that's why I liked this idea I came up with. Sorry, that sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet.
It's okay,
but
it's okay.
of having county elections every 2 years, because it gives you yet another opportunity to do the exact same thing as impeaching, but it's done on a different platform where there's less scope for you to or for the person to manipulate the process. So a county election every 2 years, if you're not happy with your governor, you can replace them, because the impeachment process, it can be marred with a number of different things. It can be so time consuming that while the person is still in office, they're still continuing with their abuse of office. And then of course this idea of being able to compromise some of the people involved in the process, MCAs and so on, can negate from the very gains that we're supposed to get from impeachment.
How about at the national level again? Looking at the national level. So yes, we're talking about institutions. Institutions are actually manned by human beings. But when in the case of Kenya, the strength of the institutions is the strength of the people in those institutions.
The individuals who sit
in the individuals who sit in those institutions. So if we were to have some impeachment proceedings in Kenya, that we're talking about both houses of parliament, do you see any instance where we actually go through this to the logical conclusion? Yes, the politics, of course, will have center stage in the public domain. This is our people, these guys are trying to remove our political party or our party leader. But the process itself, in terms of investigating, being impartial in investigations, being impartial in tabling the reports in Parliament, being impartial in discussing them and debating them, in voting for them.
Unfortunately, all indicators point from, just how we've seen things historically. All indicators point to the fact that politics will be played, there'll be money changing hands, and there will still be that scuttling around, protecting personal interests, pushing towards a desired end. It's unfortunate, but that is what we have right now. And if you were to ask that if impeachment proceedings could actually succeed here, you have already a gloomy picture has been painted, because you would see that playing out. Money will change hands, the politics will run the day, the politics, whether on a micro or macro level, will run the day, and it will be scuttled out unless the politics rally around to actually removing an individual that the greater majority don't want there.
I mentioned about the worldview as a perspective from which to look at things. I think it's all positive. You see, when you talk about impeachment, some years ago, we had this matter. The Honorable James Orengo brought up such a matter in our own parliament against the then President Moi. It didn't really go very far, apart from it being mentioned and it being in the papers as being mentioned. It went that far. But remember, anytime something gets into the public domain, it's public education. The public gets to understand something they previously didn't.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we have never understood, that presidents can be gotten rid of, people in higher office can be gotten rid of by certain legal
instruments
within our constitution. So it isn't a lose, it's a win. Whether someone is impeached or not, if the matter raises enough dust and remains in the public domain, the public discussion for a length of time, for me, it's a win.
Indeed.
Large picture, it's a win, because people then understand something about this thing that they didn't.
For the purposes of education and information right now, if the situation arose where legal instruments then would be, of course, now applied to see that an individual will be up for impeachment proceedings. Just as an example, who raises, who supports, and then who now pushes forward in this country, Kenya specifically? And we say that here we are with a situation whereby, there's reason has been found where this individual, we don't see them fit to hold public office any longer, and the impeachment proceedings, we're asking that they now come into play. Who would raise? And how are the citizenry involved, if involved? Or is it just the individuals around that individuals who are pushing a particular agenda?
In Parliament, the only participation that the public has is
the representatives of the
people. And listening and hearing and reading about it. That is your participation.
Exactly. So who pushes? That's what I'm saying.
So people who are pushing the process, in the Constitution.
It's provided for, but
look.
So it depends.
Let me give a different example, just to underscore what I'm trying to say. Why is it that this Punguza Mzigo issue is becoming the issue? Yet it isn't. Because someone actually went to our constitution, understood it, and said, if I want
this.
Yes. And they went about the process. Do you know why people kept quiet about it? They thought getting 1 million signatures
it's so difficult.
Not going to happen. They got 1 million signatures. The IEBC verified and said these things are correct. That is the world view, the big picture. It can be done. It's now a subject of debate. They have to go through these processes. Whether it's defeated or not, in my opinion, it's already won, because they have shown that the
process can actually work.
It can actually work.
But the process has to be a balance, of course, because what you don't want to do is weaponize or use it give it scope for it to be used as a weapon and bring people down because of political differences and so on. So it shouldn't be easy to impeach somebody. Otherwise, elected leaders would be in and out of office as we see fit, whoever we is, Parliament.
It doesn't matter which part of the world you're in, it's never easy.
Yeah,
it
so
isn't.
I don't think it should be an easy process
easy.
to impeach. You've got to balance it.
The balance exists because of self-interest. You see? So even if someone is known to be guilty or someone is known to be culpable, because of self-interest and our person syndrome and what have you, that whole process will be drawn out. And I'm saying this is good because it educates the public. This is something the public doesn't usually deal with.
No.
Yes.
You see it, and also it creates that knowledge to the person who's holding that office of executive that, well, if you actually get to a certain point where you don't have support of these institutions that we're talking about, they'll remove you.
Be thrown out.
And they have that mandate and they have that authority. If I just read to you, just to answer maybe I think the question that you asked broadly, just to tell you how the removal of president by impeachment, a member of the National Assembly, supported by at least a third of all the members, can bring a motion. If that motion is supported by at least 2/3, then it goes into the Senate, and the president shall continue to perform the functions of the office pending the outcome of the proceedings required by this article. And now we shall form committees that shall start investigating what this is, and we go into an investigation, and that comes back into Parliament, and then it's debated, it's voted. So it starts with at least get a third of MPs, then get 2/3 of MPs in the National Assembly, then it goes into the Senate, and the whole Parliament is now involved, and we go into investigating it. So it's a long process. Rightly so, because you're talking about removing somebody who was elected by the people. But also, we are saying if you're the representatives of the people who are this number are actually convinced that this person has grossly violated what he's not supposed to have done, he has actually done something wrong, they remove him. And it's a good process. And I like what Citi is saying. It exposes the public and the citizenry to what they have as instruments of their governance. We have had 4 impeachments. This is going to be the 4th,
yes.
right? You're saying
yes.
in recent memory, or
yes.
is it in
history?
In history, right? In America, none of them has gone through.
No.
This one is also likely not to go through, but at least you go through the process.
You know, when you look at the leaders who stand to be impeached, how they fight, for us, most leaders who are in the positions of, say, the president or a governor, these are people who are untouchable, and some of them actually think and believe they are. But this is that reminder again, worldview, that you actually are not, and that
not
you
above the law.
No, and that you actually are answerable.
We can come for you.
Yes, security for the individual citizen is provided in many ways, not just necessarily through the police force. It's through understanding and knowledge that certain things are there to protect them. And protection is not just looking after you, but people who harm you in positions of authority can be brought to book. It's good for people to see these things. It's important. It's something that encourages you and you feel, yes, there is some justice after all. This is what people feel when they see someone who's considered to be a big person coming down. They feel, oh, even they can come down. Okay, so it's not just us who are... Because most times in a country like ours, the Mwananchi believe that he is picked on, and the law is set in place to frustrate him and to make his life difficult. And it's to make the lives of those who are in positions of authority better. That is the general feeling. Now, they must know that that is not the case, and they can't know it unless they see it. And the way they see it is when such processes are brought to the fore.
0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can weigh in on this conversation we're having this morning. Also, you can weigh in on the conversation on our Facebook page, that's Spice FM KE, and on Twitter, hashtag Situation Room, and our handle is Spice FM KE. I had a caller on the line. This was Kellon, and then he dropped off. So, Kellon, if you can call back, we'd love to hear what you have to say on this. And the conversation that Citi is raising this morning is giving us the example of what we are seeing happening in other parts of the world. We are seeing the impeachment proceedings that are commencing in America, brought into against President Donald Trump. We are seeing what's happening in the UK. Prime Minister had made some decision that has been overturned by the Supreme Court of the country, and now he is under serious political heat. And then, Citi, you're bringing it back to the country and saying what this exposes is...
Look, why don't we just take this thing around the corner to Egypt here? They're having a problem right now. What do you think the problem is about? Because someone is saying the president is corrupt. The president is doing things that he shouldn't do.
Abusing office.
Precisely. Now, we talked about the Arab Spring. What do you think all that was about? These were things which were simmering. The problems had been there all along, albeit they were encouraged and pushed and buffeted by other powers, yes, but the problems did exist. Now, one prays that it doesn't get to the point where it actually blows up like that. Now, what we are seeing here, this process that I'm saying, if you look at the stability of those countries that we speak of, because it is known such things can happen and that it is possible for a president to even step down, the citizens really believe in their processes of law because of these things.
It's very interesting that you say that, because if you look at, tangibly, if you look at Tahrir Square in Egypt, it was very odd in 2011 or before 2011, before 2010, that you would have individuals entering and protesting in Tahrir Square. It was almost as if you were doing something akin to, treason, entering the square and protesting in that square. And just because of what you said, we look at it almost 10 years later, and it was without question. Should we then go? It was the first port of call. Get into Tahrir Square, and it will. Attention, we will get it. We will seek attention and we will get it. And so I think as you go further into the process, it's happened the first time, it's happened the second time. So now people then are aware that this process can actually take place. It can actually happen. And because of the action that we took many, many years ago, a president was taken out of power. Basically, a president was ousted. And so if we push this particular agenda, and if we push it forward with all the vigor that we have, who knows what could happen again? You see, so you get bolder because of the fact that you get bolder and more empowered because of the fact that you have that information.
Indeed. The conversation continues. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Jerry Thorne, CT Muga, Ndu Oko, and I'm Eric Latif. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Everybody's asking what is
Traffic.
happening along Limuru Road. Is someone out there? We are stuck. Yes, there's a lot of traffic. The traffic is coming from Ruaka up the road. It is quite a mess. There are police on the scene trying to get the traffic to be smoother now, but you've got to be patient. It is the time. It's our getting around about 8 o'clock, and we see that happening there. The Thika Superhighway has pockets of traffic jams into Allsops. It eases in towards the Survey, then picks up again into the Utali Drift, Pangani. Most affected are some of the service lanes. So people using service lanes as an option, and that is causing more traffic along the way. Mombasa Road is not raining. It's one of the places in Nairobi City that is not raining this morning. However, traffic is bumper to bumper. Everybody heading towards the CBD, and it's going to be clogged up, but definitely will dissipate once everybody gets where it is they are going. If you find an alternate route, or you are on an alternate route and you find there's traffic as well, we'll try to get people out of there. So send us a message, give us a call, 0719 012 600.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, The only
Kenya's
way
biggest
to...
conversation on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri, 97.6 in Malindi. On Facebook, Spice FM KE. On our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Our hashtag on Twitter is Situation Room. The conversation that we're having this morning is regarding impeachment of a president in our systems of government and what that does to the electorate.
And I'm saying this, it's not anything that cannot be foreseen. I was giving the example of this issue with CFSs in Mombasa because it's something that's come to the fore. It's something that can be foreseen and it's something that is understood. Even if all the containers that come to this country went through the process of the SDR, the truth of the matter is we still wouldn't be able to pay that debt, not through the volume, because the volumes are simply not enough. But what instead the advice has brought about is a situation where we have something that didn't exist before. We have something called double landing of containers. You have the first and second mile. All these are cost addition, things which didn't exist. So you have an entire region and an entire group of people who are actually dependent on this. I brought in the comparison of tea because Mombasa doesn't grow tea. But they have a sea, they have a port, and this is their farm. This is what people there do. Now, when livelihood is threatened to this degree, all you're saying is that in one fell swoop, people are unemployed and they do not know what to do with themselves. You have a situation when the citizenry suddenly look and ask, but how on earth is the government impoverishing us when their work is supposed to better our lives? It looks like a simple thing, but these things never are.
And this impeachment would be a better route than going down the streets. But then how do you ensure that
I am trying to say that even with the impeachment process, these things can be avoided. If you look at the debate around Brexit and what brought about, Boris was trying to push an agenda, a particular agenda.
Yep.
And he was pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And it's clear he didn't need to. Remember, in 2017, it was 2016, when there was a referendum and people decided to move out of the EU. My friend, there were so many considerations that needed to be taken because there were many considerations that were taken when they began it in the first place. So now, the worldview wasn't taken into account. Now you then have a situation now. Boris didn't get into this so that he could get himself impeached.
He took a gamble, though.
Yes, but he's precisely there. He's at the point of he's being told, get out.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. When you take a step that with time, not too much time, becomes obvious that the interest of the people you're supposed to represent wasn't taken into account, people want you out. That's what I'm saying. They say, no, this guy, let him go. He's the cause of and you may not be the cause. All you did was implement something that other people who you have within advised you.
Maybe they didn't think they didn't
think it through. So the question is, what were they thinking? What were they thinking?
You may have an end product in mind, but then you ignore the process
and the details and the alternatives that may exist. And usually it arises when you don't consult people in that particular field, people who know and could have told you. But you decide, you make an executive fiat and you determine this how you want to go about it.
I think the decision we can take here, and I really like that, nobody's above the law. That's becoming increasingly clear in the West, where Boris might have to resign. There's this impeachment, which of course would complicate his re-election, even if he's not impeached, Trump that is. But I think it's also important, we keep calling this an instrument for the citizenry to bring those that they have elected to make them accountable, to remind them that we can remove you, and also to give them a sense of confidence that we've put the right person in, but should anything go wrong, we've got an avenue through which we can get out of this.
Yes.
But I don't think enough Kenyans know about this. So it's important that sometimes we get more international news. Kenyans get to see what happens elsewhere, how democracy operates as a mature democracy, and also maybe some civic education around certain aspects of the Constitution. A lot of people don't know impeachment exists, and they feel that that's it for the next 5 years. We've got to stay with this governor, and usually it's a political trigger that would lead to impeachment. So it would be political players within the arena that would push for impeachment. Whereas if if the citizenry and the electorate, of course, knew all about this, they can even push their MPs or parliamentarians to push for an impeachment if they're not happy with their governor. So I think if we could use this opportunity to amplify this and make sure that Kenyans see what is happening, how a mature democracy works, the fact that impeachment does exist and serves as a tool to ensure that the elected leaders do not abuse office and there's no gross misconduct and
Let's
so
take
on.
the conversation to the plenum. We have Kellen calling in again from Kisumu. Good morning, Kellen.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Everybody's in there.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good. How are you, Colin?
Pretty here. What I'm coming up with, my opinion is a little open on the way at which we look up to our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, you've given a reference of the Speaker of Kisumu Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
The nature at which Mr. Olo was, selected and actually taken before the county assembly and actually accepted to be or interviewed and qualified to be in the position of the speaker is actually a shortcoming, a shortfall, because these guys did not do what is referred to as due diligence. Chapter 6 did not qualify these guys for being in that position, because when we look at his integrity, he left a question mark in the LBDA plaza when it was being done. You know, somebody should have gone back to do a background check, but this was done. So when we are talking about the law, I think in the world today, Kenya has the best constitution in the world.
Right.
But is it implemented? No. Why? Because we don't know that it should be implemented. Why don't we know that it's not supposed to be implemented? People are not informed of what they pass. So I think the most important thing here is the civic education that you're bringing. Like, for example, let's look at what is happening in the United States right now with Donald Trump. Nancy is saying something that is very important now, that you see, you have gone against the law. So it's not about whistleblowers, it's not about every other thing, it's the law. You did something. Hello.
Yes, we're still here.
Then we go to the UK. You realize all those rulings. I mean, these guys are fighting the law, you know. And then we are coming back to Kenya, where we find that somebody misadvises the president, for instance.
Yeah.
And then he walks away with it, you know. The person who misadvised the president still works with the president. So, you know, this puts us in a very tricky position.
Yeah.
Somebody who is incapacitated to be in a position of advisory is put in the position of advisory and is not an authority in anything. Like, for example, I listened to you talking about the SGR and things like that. When the railway was being shut down, like every other person knows, every government corporation was shut down for the so-called, today they have a new name called cartels. Then they were businessmen, but they crossed over into parliament, and today they are not called businessmen, they are called cartels. The biggest dragon in Kenya that cannot be touched by anybody. Now, when they were shutting down the railways, they had brought in the signal freight and all these kind of trucks. You know all those trucks that are jamming Mombasa Road all the way to Balaba. So when they were doing this, they knew so well that after taking over from the railway, they would do it. Now, when they're being pushed again into SGR, who somebody else also had interest, they are realizing that, oh, yes, these guys are going to mess up something. Now we are talking about the bonded warehouses and things like that, which are private business individuals. You know, those bonded warehouses are licensed to private business people. You know,
and all this, you're saying that, you know, sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where the person who's making a decision, i.e. the president, is being misadvised by people below him, or maybe the CS is being misadvised and something like that. And then bringing it back to impeachment and the instruments that we have, you've actually raised that issue and said sometimes it also begins from the people themselves not knowing what they have at their disposal, right?
You know, until when we'll put the law right, that you're coming to campaign and you tell us where your money is coming from, then the law will protect us. Yeah. But somebody walks into campaign, like, look at what is happening in Kibra right now. There is a lot of money flowing in Kibra. Nobody's questioning where that money is coming from. We don't know whether this is another way of money laundering, playing games and things like that. We don't know what is exactly going on, but we are seeing money. And on all these elections, we see money, and nobody questions where the money comes from. Then you also want to question the leadership after the money? No, you'd be lying.
Kellan, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Asante sana for your contribution.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Till then.
You managed to twist it very well into bringing it to the country, and now the conversation that we're having, and Jerry, you've actually said it. It's important that we highlight and we keep highlighting the instruments that the citizenry have of putting their leaders and keeping their leaders accountable. But also important to know how best to utilize these instruments as well, because of many cases where people may misuse the same instrument that they have because they do not understand exactly how it works.
You see, why to me this particular matter is important is the attention that we pay to things that I would argue don't really matter, and we focus on the things we don't focus on the things that actually do matter. And whenever the livelihood of individuals within the country is threatened, whether it is by drought, whether it is by natural causes, or whether it is by perchance, then it is a matter of importance and it must be addressed. So everything else that you want to talk about suddenly becomes unimportant. If people don't have food, why then do you want to discuss all these other things? If schools are breaking down or schools aren't being managed properly and children are dying, why then do you want us to discuss other esoteric matters that don't relate directly to the lives of people? If we have a transport issue and the matatu industry is a menace more than it is a help, why then do you want us to discuss about expanding things that don't particularly have a direct interest? I mean, all I'm saying is, sometimes you can be discussing things which may seem important, but in the scheme of things, they are not the most important at that particular point in time. And so people will not resonate with them. And I'm saying people must. And when people don't, the examples are, when I talk about the Arab Spring, I'm talking about the many avenues by which people will express whatever it is they feel. Now, impeachment just happens to be an instrument that exists, yes. But you would rather it went that route because it is containable. If it goes the other route, it is not containable. And I'm saying it begins with these small things that people think are small. That's where it begins.
They may seem small. They are not small. They could boil up into something bigger. I don't want to say boil down because be the other way around. It could boil up into something bigger. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM at 8:15.
Calling all homeowners present and future. It's time to live your dream in your dream home. Whether you're looking to buy or simply renovate it. From Friday 27th to Sunday 29th of September 2019 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. come on over and be part of the Owner Home Expo at KICC, courtesy of the Standard Group in partnership with The Property Show. Get to interact with home developers, real estate representatives, financial advisors, as well as other private and public players in the market to help you realize your home goals. It's your window of opportunity. Your door has finally opened and entry for all will be absolutely free. Owner Home Expo.
Find a home.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. C.T. Muga, Jerry Thorne, Ndu Oko, and I'm Eric Latif. How's Africa doing, Ndu?
Well, Africa's doing fantastically well.
It's rising.
Such is the narrative that has been painted that Africa is rising. If we look at where this narrative came from, about almost 15 years ago, it was put out to us that Africa is rising, yes, by one famous publication called Time Magazine. And it was put out, Africa is rising. We are the richest continent on the planet in terms of mineral resources. In terms of human resource, we're touted to be, to actually control almost half of the world's population in the next few years. 2 billion babies will be born in the next 33 years on this continent. 93% of Africa's population have access to mobile telephones. However, less than two-thirds of our population have access to water. If we want to look at those comparisons and we want to say, where are we? Is Africa still rising? I tend to think of something that rises to have a cap at some point. We've been rising for a very long time. But can we see the results of this rise? The rise must at some point reach its pinnacle, must reach its summit, must get to the place where we say, aha, we've gotten to our aha moments, and we've gotten to the place whereby we see things have changed and we're able to actually cement our position as a leader. By all indicators, by all pointers, we should be a leader on this planet. With our innovations, with our basic human resource, we should be a leader. We've created skylines. We have copied a lot of the infrastructure that we see the world over, but I dare say that we are at a position where physical infrastructure without mental reconfiguration is an exercise in futility. Africa has been rising, but we have not reached our summit.
Okay.
Yes, I know.
Africa is rising.
We've been rising for a very long time. We continue to rise and rise and rise, but where are we going?
Where's our summit, though? Because
Exactly.
there's somewhere where you feel that we should be, that we are not.
I think there's a lot that we have done in terms of infrastructure. I think there's a lot that we have done in an attempt to try and reach what is a global prescription in terms of where we should be. But there are very many internal things that we have not done. We have not focused inward, but we have tried to fill out what this prescription is on a global interface. And we have said time like, okay, this is what we should try and be like. These are the nations that we should try and emulate, without actually changing the internal workings of ourselves as nations, and then coming together to put forth a collective result in terms of what we're able to do as a continent, in terms of what we're able to do as a powerhouse. The people who say we are rising, the nations who say that we are rising, those who have formed the narrative to say that yes, Africa is rising, they see it, they see the potential. I dare say that they're actually a bit scared in terms of what we'll be able to do if we only do realize what potential we do have as countries, as individual countries, with individual demarcated sovereignty, what we should be able to do internally to now raise our profile. We have not taken grasp of that. We've not taken those into consideration. So yes, we may be rising, but if we don't
know
take the
that we
bull by the horns, we will be rising for a very long time and we're not going anywhere.
But consider this perspective. You know, the other day we were talking about climate change. Huh? And in fact, was it Eric Onjeri who brought up this and said, but surely, are we saying that what we're experiencing now hasn't happened before? And if you read around this subject, you'll find that it has. The issue isn't that it has or it hasn't. It's but the periods within which these things have happened. The first time some of these things were first noticed was 150,000 years ago, for instance, and then some took 20,000 years, 10,000 years, and now this one is 150 years. The point is, with our civilization, as we call it, the African civilization, there was a time when Africa not only had arisen, but they were at the very top. That really is the truth.
The African Empire.
The empires. Yes. When our brothers and sisters in Europe were probably still living in caves, we had situations where on this very continent, you had empires that people dreamt of emulating. And they existed.
Actually used in history now as an example of how things should happen.
And they, it's not just a question of having a way of life. They even had writing, they had skills. You see, we look at Ethiopia and you wonder, how did they get their script? How did they?
How did they?
That is what tells you that they were an empire at some point, because they evolved and developed and they got to that point. You see?
They got to that point.
They got to that point.
The Egyptians and so on.
Yes, I mean, yes. Even look at other countries. If you look at the countries that exist within the Sahel, for example, they had systems in place for government. They had systems in place for trade that have been replicated the world over. And those examples have been taken and even been applied in other countries. That has happened. If you look at Nigeria, you look at the Benin kingdoms, you look at the northern kingdoms of Shehu Shagari and the Usman Danfodios of our time. These are people who were well versed in trade, in continental trade, not just inter-country trade, continental trade. They actually set the ball rolling for things that
Went
happen
right
till
into
today.
Europe.
Exactly.
Right in.
Right
I-
into
I-
Europe.
I find
and
it-
those are still being practiced to date. My question is, what happened? Yes, we were taken over by the phenomenon that was colonialism. We were taken over. What happened?
I was actually going to get there and bring into a modern kingdom. It's called the British Empire.
What happened if we were able to do it then, before that even happened? And then they now come and tell us that we are rising. And they say, okay, we'll give you a pat on the back and say, it's all right, guys, you're doing well.
Okay, we've kind
We
of
are not.
taken a sort of philosophical trajectory here. And I find it a sad state of affairs when we as Africans have to keep going back to the past and saying, well, we used to be great and we used to be... Forget all that. Yes, that's all well and good. And I can understand that we were interfered with. But the sort of rising we're looking at, we were talking about a benchmark, because we have to live within the realms of reality and where we are now, the trajectory we are on now, which is democratization, capitalism, and so on. And so those are the goals we should be setting ourselves: economic development and democratization.
Competing on a global scale,
absolutely.
globalization.
And making sure we take advantage of globalization and we're not taken advantage of again, and
By
we can
others.
come together collectively as Africa and make sure we've got good collective bargaining
we
power.
aren't
We
taken
don't need to
advantage
keep-
of by these people. We take advantage of
Yeah,
ourselves, and then we export that advantage to other people. We sell ourselves. Why do we keep blaming the West when we're the ones who cause our own problems?
But instead of lamenting, let's look at this notion that Africa is rising, and then we're being told actually it's not rising, because
No.
that's
I was
are
actually
we
going
ri-
somewhere. You see,
we are rising.
when you talk about civilizations, what is it that these people learned from these African civilizations who visited their countries that made them become what they are? Look, it isn't a question of lamenting. It's a question of
you're
understanding. what-
philosophizing something that doesn't need to
If
go
you
in
don't
this
understand philosophy, then ask me to explain.
direction. Right, let's
Africa
go back
is
into our
rising.
history.
It's not history for history's sake.
When the Time magazine reported that Africa is rising, it set some sudden benchmarks.
They
It
were
said
specific.
There were
Yes, they were
specifics.
specific,
You
yes.
know, the 10 of the world's fastest growing economies are in Africa, and all those kind of things. You know, economies that are growing at a rate that's higher than, that's close to 10% or even above 10%.
Yes, you have a
Year
number of the
on
world's
year.
greatest companies or corporates coming in and setting up business in Africa because they see the potential to do business in Africa. Because Africa, again, when it comes to consumerism, then we're able to take that up. And those were some of the benchmarks that they actually put in place
Yeah.
to then now paste and say Africa is rising.
And it was a great thing, because all you would see from Africa is slums, poverty, starvation. So there was a shift in how Africa is viewed. The perceptions of Africa started to change, because with every report you had from Africa, no matter what they were reporting, so they'd be reporting
the backwaters.
they were reporting our runners or something great. In the backdrop, you'd see Kibera slums, always. Whereas when they're reporting even crime about the UK, in the backdrop of the imagery, what you'd see is Big Ben and glorious sort of progress. So it's very important, the image we put out there, and I'm glad that the narrative of Africa rising emerged, and even we started to embrace it as Africans and felt confident. But most importantly, it gave confidence to foreign direct investors, which then made Africa rise, because before the imagery, and remember then also the information age was only, well, let me not say information age, but technology and access to it was limited. So people only knew of it was once called the dark continent. So it's great that this narrative has come out. I think it's very helpful for Africa. As to whether it's true or not, of course, economists can tell us, because I'm suspecting that it would be based very heavily on an economical perspective. And with that in mind, I think I've just seen something from the Financial Times where Kagame is being accused of manipulating his statistics on poverty. But the narrative...
Who's accusing him?
It started by some French journalists. Hint, hint. But then you see, if and we agree that Africa is rising. Well, we agree it's there that economies in Africa have actually started developing at a faster rate than they were developing before. We are seeing that Africa's potential in terms of human capital has grown. Is it the fact that we are not taking
you are
advantage? We are
aware
not
that
taking
we-
full
you-
advantage
you are
of
aware
this
that
narrative
we are
ourselves.
we are discussing a narrative that has been handed over to us, and a yardstick that has been handed over to us by which we should judge ourselves and determine who we are. I was going about this history for a reason. And the reason was every civilization and every empire collapses at some point. And usually when it starts to decay, you don't even notice it. And the ones which rise usually are in the position Africa is in right now. We got to this stage because we were once powerful, and then we got laid back. We sat,
Now we're
we
the
relaxed. Yes, that's how it works. You get to a point where everything that was once glorious ceases to exist. Then you re-engineer it.
So are you saying that right now where we find ourselves, because we kind of are in a lull, because if we look at our GDPs, for example, 10 years ago, we're actually lower than we were 10 years ago.
That is a good
so
thing for
are we
us.
saying where we are right now is in that lull whereby we are being irritated, the underfoot is being
Yes,
irritated,
it's a
and
good
say, look,
thing.
we are not going to be able to deal
Yes,
with this anymore,
yes.
and then get what we would then call
Yes.
a growth spurt
It
in
is.
our economies?
It's how it works.
Is it
Let
gonna
me
be? Is it gonna be natural? Are we gonna be
No.
the leaders?
Are we
of
going to
of-
be
of
the
that?
are we
of
going
that
to be the
rising?
propagators
In-
of
in-
this
in-
and
in-
say we're
in
going
this
to
international-
move beyond emerging? What we continue say emerging, move beyond emerging, move beyond rising, and get to the place where we say we
know,
are a force to be reckoned with.
self-sustained growth.
Self-sustained growth, where we say we will be a force
Like
to be
the
reckoned
Asian
with. We
tigers
will be
or-
taken into consideration.
And it-
Again, we gave the example yesterday. China didn't go blasting things. There was no narrative to say this is the point at where we are in and this is what we are doing. They went, they dug deep, they did the work. And they didn't have to ask or tell anybody that here we are presenting ourselves to the world. They just did it. They changed their thinking. There was a mental reconfiguration of how they were going to go about this thing. And they went about, they did it, and then it came out and it was clear what they did.
Indeed, it was internal.
There
Everybody was playing to their own terms. I was trying
Now,
to
if we're
remember
going
the
to
name
come to
yesterday.
Africa-
I remembered it. Deng Xiaoping. He was the leader of China between the late 70s up to 92, right? And he's the man who actually led
about
to
the changes that we
the
talk
changes
about.
that we're talking
Yes.
about. He's credited with that, and he was very certain about. He was very sure about it. We as Chinese are going to dominate the world at some point, but we're going to start internally, and then we're going to open up our markets. We're going to open up our markets to start trading with others. We're going to take our people to experience other countries. We're going to bring in other people so that we can experience.
Until
not for
where
them,
they came
not
from
for them to
zero.
come and experience us. It's for them to come
Absolutely.
in so that we can experience what they have, and we take that from them and we build onto that.
And if you just look at exports alone, they came from non-existent, literally non-existent, to surpassing the number one country on the planet with the most exports, which was the US.
Now that
and,
is rising.
and they've held that position. They've held that position for the last 8 years. And from all indications, they're going to be in that position for some time to come. But that was because of the time that they spent in the trenches doing what they did. Now,
So
what I'm
what do
trying
we
to hear
need to
from
do?
you now is that
Please
we're in the
understand.
trenches now.
I am saying we haven't gotten there. Remember,
But
the
we
Great
don't have to
Famine-
reinvent the wheel. What do you mean we haven't gotten there? Why do we have
You're
to
saying
sit
this is a
and
natural
rethink?
process that we should let it
I am
evolve.
saying that this is how history has recorded these things. The sort of famine that China went through, the sort of trouble, the sort of pain, the sort of difficulties. Remember
the
they had-
labor process.
Remember,
basically.
remember they had dynasties and empires and emperors and what have you.
Many.
Yes, it isn't a process that took a year. I am simply saying, we once had those empires here. We once had those things. We've had Western influx. Okay, the process that I'm talking about is us getting to that point where, as Africans, we see things that way.
And begin to become deliberate about our actions as
That's
individual
what- that-
governments
that.
to then come together to have a collective output
That.
as the continent. Right now, why I'm saying our rising is inhibited or our rising is actually not happening is because we have not reached the level whereby we are irritated enough to do something deliberate about our thinking and then change it. How do we have 93% mobile telephony infiltration in this country and less than 2/3 of our populations have access to water?
It's
Basic.
because the telephone is something the individual can make a decision about.
and
Water is something
it-
that
it
somebody makes a
isn't.
decision on your behalf.
Wait.
Yes.
So it's about leadership.
Yes.
It's
Until
about
we get
leadership
to the
as well.
point of even again making decisions about who then we put in leadership, who will then do that
It's a
deliberate
good
thinking on
sign.
our
If
behalf.
we can buy telephones, what does
Then
it
we-
tell you we can also do?
0719 012 600. The conversation continues. It's 8:30. This is the Situation Room.
Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
All right. Thika Road traffic is stretching all the way from Survey to Guru Nanak Hospital. If you're heading to the CBD, you're going to be there for a while. The thing is that all of this traffic coming from different parts of the city, Langata Road, Ngong Road, Wayaki Way, Thika, Mombasa Road, is all culminating in the CBD, and everybody's trying to get there. And that is why we have now that added to the rain that we have today. It's a bit of a mess for a Thursday morning. All the cars are on the road. From what we've understood, it's around the time of end month, so people are going to use what they have left in their tanks because they have more money. This is all compounded, and that's why we see what we are seeing. So guys, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take it easy where you are. Tune into the Situation Room, and then we can keep you busy at least until you get where you're going. Give us a call on 0719 012 600. We'll keep you moving as best we can.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation.
96.0 Spice FM,
Nakuru.
Nakuru.
1.5 Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.6 Malindi. Our hashtag is Situation Room, and our Facebook page is Spice FM KE. The conversation we're having this hour is about Africa. Africa is rising. Pan-Africanist Ndu Oko is saying, yes, Africa could be rising, yes, but then we are not taking advantage of this. We are not leading our own rise. Am I quoting you right, or have you been misquoted by the media?
Well, I think that definitely, and as CT was saying earlier, this has been prescribed to us by others. We are basically, getting medication with a prescription that has been given to us by external factors or external actors.
They've even prescribed the disease.
They've said what we have.
Yes.
However, there's a situation that is very real to us when we look at on the ground. So there's certain things that we can make decisions about as the general citizenry, as the people who I believe definitely have the power. However, there are decisions that we cannot make for ourselves because there are individuals who've been put in that particular position to make those decisions for us. But at the end of the day, we do have the power because we are the ones who put them in those positions. Where we are, as opposed to where we should be, is going to take us a long time to get there if we do not change our thinking. And I'm saying we can build and create cement factories as long as we want. We can use all the cement in the world. We can change our outlook. Our skylines can look like the best in the world. But if our thinking doesn't change, then we will rise forever and we will not get to the boiling point. We won't.
We'll keep rising. 0719 012 600. I'm opening up the conversation. Let's hear from Mike Obare. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Spice FM.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm really excited about today's topic because it's right at the center of something that I'm involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And Africa is indeed rising. If you were keen to listen to the speech by the African Union envoy on infrastructure, Raila Odinga, during the NATS conference, he spoke about a number of things being done in Africa And the best metrics to use to measure whether we are really rising is the Agenda 2063 for African Union. We are building the Inga Dam. Inga Dam is going to produce almost double the megawatts being produced by the Three Gorges Dam, which is the largest dam in the world. That's almost 40,000 megawatts. Yeah, that's a big infrastructure project. Just recently, they passed the African Continental Free Trade Area. Yeah, which is supposed to boost trade and open Africa to the global market space. That's a big deal for Africa. Yeah. There also, I think, you also talked about linking. There are a number of transnational highways, yeah, which are being opened up even as we speak. You should be able to move straight from Mombasa to Namibia. Sorry, I'm in traffic. my phone just fell down. And I'm hoping these cops don't catch me.
Africa is rising.
You're on hands.
Yeah, I'm using my earphones.
Okay.
And the phone was on my lap. Anyway, if you look at the AU website, Agenda 2063, yeah, there are a number of projects which they've listed, and some of them are actually nearing completion. Something like I'm trying to remember this. What was it called? Establishment of the African Economic Forum, bringing together private sector, academia, government, to see how a lot of these infrastructure projects can be funded. We had a PPP conference in Uganda last week, and that's an indication of Africa rising. I mean, these are not things you'd hear of in the past.
All right. Okay. So because of the forums that have been established and the infrastructure that's being put in place across the continent, opening the continent up to kind of global feeders, and we can see these as indicators that Africa is rising, in your opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
The African passport, free movement of people. You move inside Tanzania, Uganda, you don't need a passport. You just need your ID.
Okay. All right.
So so just check that one out. At least that's a good indication,
Asante.
of some progress. Yeah.
All right.
Mike, thank you very much for calling in, and all the best in traffic this morning.
Can I chime in at this stage and actually say we might be
Jerry,
rising?
allow me to actually ask you to hold your thoughts, so I can have. This is Ronald. Ronald, good morning.
Good morning to you, Eric and Jerry and CT. And
Ndu.
Ndu.
Yes.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning to you, all good people. Now, one thing I want to throw a spanner into the works. We are talking of rising, emerging, development, name it. We are forgetting one cardinal factor, which is leadership, and this is what underpins everything.
Right.
And why am I talking about leadership here? Our way of appropriating leadership, the issue of democracy and elections, to me, is a leash on our necks.
Right.
Right.
It is a leash on our necks because we are depending on a system that probably we understand very little of. I want to think like a layman. Just assume that I never went to school for a moment. Look at what is happening in Kibra right now, where everybody is spending big money to get into office. That fellow will not think of you rising or emerging anywhere. He'll think of recouping fast.
What he's used, right.
And the rest of the world, China, the Johnny come lately, US and Western Europe, would not want us to have any strong leadership because we are contesting a position that they are holding in form of economic leadership, political leadership, even sociocultural leadership, in terms of culture and religion. If we don't wake up and
smell the coffee,
acknowledge
literally.
that we are being contained, literally.
Yeah.
You go to school and you learn to think in a certain way. You're cultured to think in a certain way. You're cultured to think that what goes to Europe is good.
Yep.
Everything that comes out of it is good. We are talking of LGBT now as rights.
So
when you talk of water, and just to tie it up to what you are talking about.
Yes.
When you talk of access to water and access to phones, have we ever considered that going to the stream to collect water is still access?
It's still access to water.
It's still access to water. The fact that it is not
Piped into your home.
Piped into your home.
You do have a point. Where the problem arises is that particular activity is curtailed by the simple absence of those streams.
They've
and
dried
those
up.
rivers, they've dried
They've
up.
dried up.
They no longer exist. Or if they exist, they're
Fine,
polluted.
fine, and now you are buying into my thinking properly. What has engendered the kind of activities that have made us cut down our trees? Deforestation.
Right.
This is industrial cropping. We are doing industrial agriculture where you need cut down every tree in your site. You have a plantation. Indigenous African agriculture was environment-friendly. I mean, you are growing things. It is small scale, and
it was actually immediate need driven.
Immediate need driven, and more importantly, eco-friendly. So it's sustainable.
It was.
Okay.
What you are complaining about now is because someone is telling you, "Oh, we need to up our forest cover. We need to kick out guys from." The first one was Mount Kenya. Now we need to kick out the ones in Mau Forest. Oh, God gracious!
Ronald, thank you very much for your contribution.
You have a good morning.
Asante sana. Have a good day.
All right.
Yeah.
Mheshimiwa Grace, good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
How are you?
Good morning.
Fine.
Well, welcome to the Situation Room once again this morning. We are talking about Africa Rising.
Yeah.
And you've been in a position of leadership, and actually somebody has also talked about leadership playing a central role in this.
Of course it does, but my worry is that these leaders, I've heard you talk about putting our guy at the top, as if that will translate into development. You see, the problem that we have in Kenya is always a contradiction, where what we say is not what we do. While we are planning any project, for instance, somebody is looking at what is going to take home. But we color it in such a manner that it is beneficial, it is for community development. And at the end of the day, it doesn't translate to the development touching on the common citizenry of the country. So, even when we say Africa is rising, are we all in sync, the leaders and the population? Or is a factor where a few people know what is supposed to be done, they take advantage, and the rest of us are waiting to be given? You see, if we want to develop as a nation, we've got to work, all of us, and everybody must understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all these MDGs and everything that we talk about in the books are in the shelves and in the minds of very few elite people.
So
and the rest of the community are not aware.
We are not all together on this journey.
We are not. And we can't move and say we are rising unless we are all pushing it up. You in understanding, yani.
We have to buy into the agenda.
Yes, and the people who will do the brick and mortar are the people down there.
Yeah.
And unless they understand it, then they won't participate.
Okay.
They'll be waiting for someone to bring development. You see, this is the issue of the leader bringing development, and maybe that's why every time we say we want our person at the top so that we are given development.
So
It should not be like that. It should be that we pass the information and then we say we move together. If I heard you talking about the Asian tigers and how they rose. Some of it took people, like in Korea, it took that guy, Park.
Yep.
Killing people.
Yeah, death.
Yeah,
Literally death. Yeah.
And he picked everybody to work. Yeah. He came in at a time when the country had no food and all that. He picked everyone to work, and even those who are working abroad, they were told to send money, and that money was used to do what? To build industries and Korea rose.
Thank you. Asante sana, Grace, for
So the
calling this morning.
leadership is got to be together with the
people.
With the people.
Yes.
Have a good day, Grace.
Bye.
Thank you.
You know my thinking. Let me premise my thinking and give you examples of what I mean. Why I brought in the concept of suffering and isolation and everything negative. The time when South Africa was sanctioned by everybody, when everything happened. History has it that the one thing that they missed more than anything else was actually not being able to play sports with other countries. Okay, but South Africa didn't disintegrate; it grew.
Yes.
And it became truly, truly, truly powerful. They even got nuclear. In this country here, there was a time when the West turned against the then President Moi and said they're not even going to give us money. Now, in theory, the country should just have collapsed, folded up. It didn't.
Yep. We didn't become a basket case.
No. In fact, oddly, the complete opposite happened. The Kenyan shilling was at its stablest against the dollar. One being lent money, we didn't have it. The country didn't halt. It honestly didn't halt. Even these massive shortages you see in Venezuela and what have you, we never experienced those things. What is truly odd is the economy actually grew. What is truly odd? You know why? The digging in we talk about, they want options. What the World Bank and the like call, well, they don't call it the hidden economy. That's what they call it. We call it the Juakali sector. It's when it grew. That was the period when we had people being retrenched. At an early age, 35, 40, you'd be retrenched. People had knowledge. They took that knowledge into this so-called informal sector. And the informal sector grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. I'm trying to say this. This rising doesn't take place as it is prescribed by the West or as it is reported by Time magazine. The change of mind that you talk about, the changing of the way people think, that happens not when people are doing well. When they're doing well, they change for the negative. When they are not doing well, they open up their mind. We have an enterprising group of Kenyans. They're called the Kikuyu. Extremely enterprising. They suffered. That enterprise did not come easily. They are the only people we know of, and the Kalenjin, some of the groups of Kalenjin who are put in concentration camps within their own country.
Do you think there is enough? Do you think where we are currently, if we can look at countries along the continent, across the continent, and understanding what you're saying, because you raise a good point, CT. But are we at the point where the irritation has reached the measure to which we are not comfortable, to the point that we say, okay, fine, we're going to do something about it? You talked about having to live in isolation, and it is in that point of isolation where certain things happened that we can now look at as markers of success and say, because of that isolation, we're able to do 1, 2, 3.
We are not irritated.
We're not irritated enough to do something about it.
No,
right now, I can definitely say that right now, we think that everything is okay, hunky-dory, as it were.
The reason
we
why
believe
I
that
brought
we are
this
fine.
Kenyan example is because when you have a group of people within your own country who are the instigators of certain areas of development,
and they're not doing their job.
No, they're actually there. You see, the Kikuyu are business people. This is my theory here. They're business people. They're Kenyan. They're indigenous. They're homegrown. Wherever they go, they conduct business. They're business people. This thing, we parody and say, oh, wanapenda ardhi. It's because it was taken from them and they got to understand and value it. Other Kenyans who never had this situation don't value land in the same way. When you have an indigenous group doing that, you actually have a homegrown solution to many things. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I got it. Now, when we look still, again, we talk about the fact that, it is in isolation that quite a lot of growth happens. At the same time, we must, whether or not we're going to use the prescription that the world gives, how that is going to predict our growth or going to predict our successes, we must also realize that we live in a global economy. We have actually brought in the tenets of globalization, and we cannot live outside of that by virtue of the fact that we are citizens of the world and not just of our country.
We can.
We can't live without the elements or the factors of globalization.
We can.
How do we then operate as isolated nations? We can't do that.
We can by using it not to the advantage of other people primarily, but also to ours. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what I mean by we can.
Okay, definitely
you are
understand
saying
that, because
it's as though this is something that we are powerless against. I'm saying not so.
I am saying the absolute opposite. We have the power. The potential for is great. The power is definitely there, and I'm not even saying that. I'm not even saying that we must then pander to the ebbs and flows of globalization.
What are you
But
saying?
I'm saying that we cannot live out of it.
Oh, that one I said we can also.
I have Weber on the line. Good morning, Weber.
Hello, Eric.
You say you're on your way from Kisumu to Nakuru, right?
Yeah.
So fast, before that, just tell us, how is the road this morning from all the way from where you've come from to where you are so far?
It's fine.
Okay. So, any incidents?
I
None.
would like to put on a small input on today's topic.
Yes.
Africa, you're saying Africa is rising. But in as much as we are rising, there are also some things which are also rising, which is making Africa not to rise anymore. First of all, look at the population structure. It's growing. The other time, Kenya, we were almost 40 million.
Yeah.
We did census the other day. We don't know, but I'm sure it will be above 40 million. Look at Nigeria. It's growing. It's over 2 million.
200
and,
million.
This,
200 million.
200 million.
Yeah.
200 million. It's growing. So, as much as we are growing, as much as we are saying Africa is rising, the population is also rising. And as the population is rising, it calls, there are some things that come in place. Something like food insecurity. We've got unemployment amongst the youth. The other day you saw whatever happened in South Africa. People were claiming, the outsiders are coming and benefiting from our country. So if we Africans can think from such a kind of perspective, it means we are not rising anymore, because if we cannot allow people from outside to come and develop our own country, then rising, I don't think if we shall be rising. And what if these people withdrew the investment and the input in their country? It means things will fall to some level. So I don't think if Africa is indeed rising. The other day we were talking about climate change. In Kenya we were talking about the Mau and the eviction from the forest. So you see, these are things that are unfolding. The population is coming about. It means we need to get more land, and it means we shall exploit a lot of things that will be coming on our place. So I think this is Africa. As much as we are saying it's rising,
there are the competing
on my side
factors.
it's not rising.
Thank you, Weber.
I think I agree with, is it Weber?
Yes.
From Kisumu. I agree with him, because I think up to now, if we look at a few facts and figures, 21 out of 25 of the world's poorest nations are in Africa. So if we look at the facts and figures, in terms of economically, we're not rising. We have come some way.
How do you measure this poverty?
But given, well, there's standards and indicators. I'm not going into that right now. Given our resources, Africa owns 12% of the world's oil reserves, 42% of the gold, 85% of chromium and platinum, 60% of arable land. Yet 21 out of 25 of the world's poorest countries are in Africa. We talk of growth and infrastructure, but these are not African trained engineers. This is the Chinese coming in and the debt that then comes with this. You see thousands of people dying on the Mediterranean trying to get away from Africa all the time. And this is not to say we don't have the ability to grow it. Maybe we're going about things the wrong way. Maybe we need to move from the idea of agriculture and move into complete industrialization. In fact, that's what we need to do in order to reach economic development. Of course, that would also entail getting good leadership to ensure that the plans and our visions materialize. But we do need to move away from agriculture in order to reach this rising that we talk about. I'm shocked to hear we're now setting goals for 2063. I mean, that's that's 40 years ago. What is, where have we reached? And also, let's not forget there's the cancer, there is corruption that limits our development, and also very importantly multinationals and tax evasion. We're not getting the money that we should be getting. In fact, if the multinationals did not do their illicit financial flows and transfer pricing and so on, would actually be probably 50% of the way there without us even industrializing. But we need to industrialize. We need to cut down on the illicit financial flows from the multinationals. And of course, in order to achieve all of these, it goes back to what you were saying, CT, the leaders, because we've got all these resources. I'm talking about having 60% of arable land in the world, 42% of gold in the world, yet 21 out of 25 countries of the poorest countries are in Africa. So when it comes to Africa rising, it's a great narrative. It may have painted us in a better picture than the dark continent, where all you would see is starving children and slums and so on. And perhaps that would have encouraged people to maybe invest in Africa, come to Africa, visit, maybe encourage tourism and so on. But if you look at the reality on the ground, you look at the facts and figures, there's still a long way to go. And some of the factors I've highlighted, including the tax evasion by the multinationals, including corruption by our leaders, those factors and the reliance on agriculture to develop. I don't think any country has developed through agriculture. We need to industrialize and then open up our borders as well. We're exporting. We can't even feed ourselves. We export. We're importing.
Agrarian or industrial revolution?
We're in terms of revolution, you'd say industrial, as before.
Came first.
The agrarian came
the
first.
Agricultural revolution.
People had food security, and then they had spare time, and then they moved into industrial revolution.
But in order to reach economic development as we know it today, we're going to have to industrialize. There's no doubt about that. But when we look at our resources and then compare that to the fact that we still cannot feed ourselves, we are spending $35 billion a year on importing foodstuffs into Africa. Something is definitely wrong. There's a disconnect somewhere. So yes, the narrative is great, but in reality, Africa is not rising.
So Africa is rising, Africa is not rising, Africa is not exploiting its full potential, Africa is being let down by its leaders, Africa does not, some of our callers are also saying Africans do not actually know also that whether they are rising or not. Well, the conversation continues. This is Spice FM. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the next hour, we are going to shift the gear again and have a different conversation, but also we'll still have our phone lines open. That's 0719 012 0719 012 You can also comment on our Facebook and Twitter. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All right, Bagathi Way from T-Mall roundabout heading towards the City Motorway roundabout is moving, but it's slow, and that is one alternate route that others have taken this morning. There was quite some traffic in different pockets of the city because of the fact that it has rained this morning and people are looking for alternate routes. We have a better situation now looking out of Limuru Road, which is quite narrow, but it was an alternate route coming off the Thika Superhighway and trying to access the CBD, taking the long roundabout route. All right, yes, there is still madness on many parts of the road. There was an early morning dose of tear gas along Racecourse Road, Riverside. Apparently, the motorcycle motorcycles are on the road again in protest over something or other, but we'll see what that turns out to be. Mombasa Road from Syokimau leading towards Cabanas, Kameshikana, but Kanasonga, Mosmos. We hope that is a better situation as we move through the hours of the day. Send us a message or give us a call and let us know how we can keep you moving. 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Well, we are broadcasting across the country, 97.6 in Malindi, 90.9 in Nyeri. We are in Eldoret, 96.7, Nakuru, 96.0, 102.5 in Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, 94.4 in Nairobi, and also all across Africa on www.spicefm.co.ke, worldwide, www.spicefm.co.ke, also on Facebook, SpiceFMKE, on Twitter, SpiceFMKE, and our hashtag is Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719 012 600 is how you can chime in into the conversation. And now the conversation moves into an age-old debate. The separation between church and state. Or shall we just, round it up and say religion and state?
Eric, before we go there, I want to say this. I feel we didn't, this Africa Rising, we didn't get into it properly. We need to go into it again.
We need to
Yes, because we were repeating platitudes that have been repeated before, and we want actually getting into what it is that makes people bring about change that is useful to them. But anyway, my thoughts. Church and state.
Church and state is like water and oil, or it should be like water and oil, i.e. they shouldn't mix. That is my stand today. We have the church in Kenya, which plays a crucial role in society and guiding us ethically. But in Kenya, we also have the church playing a crucial role in governance. We've seen it, I was going to say rear its head, but we've seen the church come through even in our constitution. We've seen it have some weight in some of the rulings. We've seen a recent case on homosexuality and its decriminalization. We saw the churches bring their opinion there. But what is the role of the church in society, and should it play a role, as it does in Kenya, in the state? Our very own national anthem itself is a prayer. So simply put, the separation of church and state is very important because it allows religious believers and non-religious believers as well the freedom to practice the religion of their choice, or not practice a religion at all without the interference from the government. That is what I'm saying. We need to separate these two, and I want us to look at two instances where I feel the church has overstepped its mark as the custodian, or rather as the person mandated with a duty to guide us ethically. And the first one being their involvement in the Constitution, primarily banning abortion, and second one with this ruling in court on homosexuality. Should the church have had a say in that? That's what we want us to discuss.
So,
give a handful of controversial stuff right
but first of all, start by defining say.
Say we know the church's input in the Constitution. The thing is, the church is very influential in terms of, even just from a very basic perspective. People go to church every Sunday. There's the sermon. There's now politicians fighting for the podium. And they're in every community.
Church every day of the week, actually.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mostly on Sundays and Saturdays.
All right.
But carry on. Yes.
Okay. And then the church is very influential. It's penetrated every communities. Every community, you have churches everywhere. As a result, you find politicians also wanting to fight for the podium. And then the church has been considered the custodian of morality and the truth. So a lot of what is said from them is considered gospel. So it is influential to the people in that way. In terms of its participation and having a say in our constitution, I know through different bodies that were consulted, they were very against abortion, and this is why we have that provision in Article 3 where they state that life begins at conception, of which to me is a philosophical question that nobody has ever been able to answer, not doctors, not philosophers. I don't know how the church can decide that life begins at conception, but in deciding that, it is then of course illegal to have an abortion. And the end result or the outcome of that sadly in Kenya, and the way the provision is put, is that unless a doctor deems it necessary for the safety of either mother or baby, it is illegal to have a termination, because in essence it is murder, because life begins at conception. Now the outcome of that sadly is that only the poor can't have abortions, because rich people can afford to go to the doctor and get this prescription that, it is a danger to the mother's life. It could just be purely on a psychological basis. It's distressing and so on. So what ends up happening is poor people go to these quack doctors to procure an abortion, and there's a lot of unnecessary deaths. Of course, I'm now going into other realms, but what I'm saying is that was put there at the behest of the church. So the church got involved in something I think is illegal. Personally, I think the church should be there to guide you personally, and the law and the state is there for public affairs. The church should not get involved in matters of public affairs.
It was actually a very heated conversation at that time, when the church was really pushing to completely outlaw abortion in all cases, and the church still felt that it has not won. Even what was included in the constitution, it felt it has not won. The church also, the Christian clergy were against the inclusion of the Catholic courts in the constitution, and they came out so strongly against that as well. So you remember,
and this is a huge percentage of Kenyans that you would be discounting altogether.
Yes.
So is it nationality or is it religion? And that's why I say
that was a push from evangelicals in America.
Whoever it was from, the church embraced it and took on the mantle. And
there's certain elements within the church leadership that embraced it. You see, even church leadership is human leadership, and they can be misinformed, because that was the height of intolerance. They are going against the very tenet that Christianity advocates for.
Let me play a clip that jogs our memory a little bit, because this happened about 10 years ago, right? So this was the NCCK, and what they said their thoughts were on the inclusion of the Catholic courts in the Constitution.
Christians will vote no at the referendum on account of the inclusion of Catholic courts in this draft.
Si kitu ambacho kitadhulumu mtu yeyote kikitolewa kwa katiba, ni kwa sababu tutakuwa tunaheshimu msingi ambao tumeweka wa katiba, ambayo msingi ni kwamba mambo ya siasa pamoja na mambo ya religion vitengwe.
We have called you and addressed the nation in good time when this process is still underway, so that in case anybody thought that we were joking or are intimidated, they wake up to their senses and recognize that very good work that has been done could be thrown to waste.
So there you have it, quite a strong statement there, a serious aversion to anything non-Christian. And this is the main risk that we run by having church in government, is that we can exclude those who don't believe. We can't have the government prescribing what our internal thoughts are and what our religion should be, because we come, for instance, and a clear example here is there's Muslims in the country. So what do we discount them as Kenyans?
But was that not a position where a group of people who represent the Christian church were speaking as a group, as an interest group, or as a community? So are they not allowed to air their views, much as repugnant as we may consider the views to be? Are they not allowed to air them?
Absolutely, but as to whether we then incorporate their views out of pressure, out of legal, whatever reason we would do it, we should not be doing it as government, or government should not be incorporating their views. In fact, the U.S., the First Amendment is all about making sure that no laws are made on the basis of any religion, because you leave people out. There's different religions. So it's, and also the church, this is now conflating or bringing together scripture and the Constitution. And we talked about the Constitution being fluid because the law is made for the man, not man for the law. The Bible and scripture, it's quite static, to be honest. So it doesn't evolve with society.
Are you speaking from a position of knowledge?
No, I have very little knowledge of the Bible. I'll say that right now.
Then carry
But
on.
what I do
Bible,
know,
the Bible is not amended, CT.
we don't have.
When you say amended, what do you mean?
We don't have
we-
referendums to change the
don't-
Bible.
We don't have a BBI or a Punguza Mzigo initiative, which we are saying now.
You do.
We don't like this
You
part
do.
of the Bible.
It's just not called a BBI, but you do. That's why you have the Revised Standard Version of the Bible.
That's
what-
revised in the language, but not in.
In your
we're not-
opinion, what is an amendment?
amending is like
It's a change.
It's a change.
And revising is what exactly?
It's changing the language. It's going with the times. It's like having a new.
So who writes a
So,
revised
so,
version?
so we're now discussing semantics, here, aren't we?
Speaking of the Bible the Bible itself advocates for separation of church and state. In Matthew, chapter, which one do you say first? Chapter 22, verse 21. It says, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." Caesar being the land and the law of the land. And to me, I would interpret that as separation of church and state. But I want us to expand this discussion and actually talk about what the role of the church is. I'm not saying it should be obsolete. Let's talk about the role of the church and maybe even look at other countries and, you know, how religious they are and what their governance is like, because there has been a direct correlation, or there's been some studies that have shown that some of the most religious countries in the world are the most corrupt vis-a-vis some, or, you know, you juxtapose that to some other statistics that show some of the least religious countries, Scandinavian countries, are the least corrupt. So when it comes to even morals and ethics and so on, what role is the church playing? What is the role of the church in society and government? That's what I want us to look at, and very openly.
You know, you see, you discuss religion as though it's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You are talking about conventional religion that is demarcated in the realms of Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism. Agnosticism is a religion. Atheism is a religion. Animism is a religion. This is what you may not
If
understand.
you're agnostic, you're not religious. You just don't know what's going on.
No, you
No,
are.
agnostic is you're
No.
undecided. It's not a religion.
No,
you
it
can't
is.
organize
It's a position.
indecisiveness.
It's a
Well,
position.
every
religion
single
is about
thing
faith.
is a position.
Yes.
Religion,
yes. And I'm saying,
if
I'm
you're-
taking the discussion that even non-faith is faith. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
non-faith is what? Is believing in nothing, or
Claiming
So
you
what-
believe in nothing.
Well, if you're agnostic,
It means you prescribed a position for yourself.
Okay,
So
maybe
that's
for,
where
for
you are.
purposes of this conversation, let's define religion. All right. So for purposes of this conversation, and let's talk about
Well,
religion to pinning it down to faith and faith in belief in deity.
and in an
So that
organized
way, now you say
manner,
in an
because
organized
there's
manner.
spirituality and religion.
Yes.
So in an organized, structured environment where there's usually a hierarchy of sorts and promises.
So those who say they don't believe are actually not being religious. Therefore, in the context of this conversation. So what's the role of religion in our society? What's the role of government in our society?
And church, as we know it,
What
and
is
we
the
can
role
extend.
of religion as you understand
Religion
it?
is a belief in an almighty controlling power.
Yep.
Okay. Now you
Yes.
can choose that almighty controlling power by now a sect of religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, etc., etc.
The supreme
So it's in the
Even
belief that there is a supreme
even
being.
a belief in government is a religion. Because what do you think the people who prescribed communism were doing? They simply changed religion from a deity you couldn't see to one whom you lived with on a daily basis.
No. There's usually some metaphysics, as we call it, so things outside the realms of reality, or
heavenly,
heaven,
hell,
earth,
yeah.
God, the devil, angels, and so on in religion.
They can
and
be
there's a
fully
deity.
manifest in a day-to-day basis if you wish. In a
You-
manner
you-
that you
no,
can easily
we're
understand.
stretching it. Let's keep within
No,
the
I'm
realms of
actually not-
reality for the sake of the conversation that I'd like us to have.
Let's
CT, we
contain
can
it.
have that
CT,
philosophical
let's
conversation
contain it. Let's
on another
let's
day.
keep it in this bucket. In
Because
what-
otherwise,
in what
CT, are we
convention-
really here even? Are you
we
a figment
oh,
of my
no,
imagination?
I am
No.
definitely here. You see, the thing is, what I'm trying to bring out is to get you to understand that you are arguing against something you're prescribing. You want to insist that religion must be this thing that you have packaged, and I'm trying to tell you it isn't.
I am
so.
talking about let's
Conventional.
That's all I'm
oversimplify it.
saying.
Let's
It
talk about
isn't so.
church and state. Church
Yes.
as we know it.
That discussion is called yes.
Okay, let's
proceed.
discuss. Okay,
Christian
semantics.
church
Semantics, CT. But you'll have
No,
your way
it's not
today.
semantics.
Not your way with me, but your way today. You'll have it. So. Church and state, should they be separated? What role should the church play in our governance systems? What role is it playing in society? We're seeing a lot of new churches mushrooming, and of course there's a lot of this prosperity preaching, and we're seeing a lot of the idea of wealth acquisition being propagated as our main aim in life in terms of self-actualization is all about acquiring all these things, and that's what people are aspiring to, and even giving money in order to achieve this. Some people might argue that it gives people hope, and people need hope. Others might argue it's very misleading. We saw Kagame try and curb this to a certain extent by ensuring that anybody going into this field has at least a certain qualification in theology, for instance. Here, of course, there's very little regulation in that industry. I'll call it an industry for lack of a better word. Very little regulation, because I think also the government relies quite heavily on the church and these churches, first of all, to give people hope where there's hopelessness, where they're not providing services, jobs, and so on.
And to whip people to a certain position.
Absolutely, and to help influence the masses. It's a brilliant platform for government. As a result, you find the government will turn a blind eye, so to speak, to some of these antics. And interesting.
There you are. We've actually answered the question.
Two things
What's
there.
the role that the church is playing in our society?
That it is
These are the sort of evangelical, non-conventional churches that are popping up.
All churches, Jerry. I mean, it's about faith, it's about hope, and about a reward. And so for you to get this reward, you need to live in a certain way. And so it brings in the value system. So that value system, abide by this value system, and there is the hope that you shall get rewarded at the end of it by A, B, C, D.
But you must look like, if we're going to speak, because when we talk about the church, then definitely we're talking about Christianity. And anybody who follows Christianity also doesn't come from the premise that it's something that you do on a certain day. However, it is a way of life. It is how you live. So then you cannot then separate it 7 days a week. You cannot separate from how you operate. So then they say, if I am a Christian, it's not about Sunday. It's about every day
life.
of what I do and everywhere in which I exist. So I can be a doctor, and my Christian life should come through even in my practice of medicine. If I happen to be a politician and a Christian, then Christianity actually pushes for me to live this life even in my political life. So there you would be very hard pressed to separate the two, because it is a way of life as opposed to something that you do on a 1, 2, 3 day basis.
But should it be part of our governance in terms of the decision-making process, the legal process, the electoral process, the democratic process? Should the church
let me give you a perspective.
Should the church have a say?
It should give us a break in some cases.
Jerry, let me give you a perspective. You see, all these individuals you see in government, all these politicians we like to speak ill of, very many of them belong to this very institution we are speaking about.
The church.
And the influence of the tenets that they adhere to within the church, they don't leave them when they come to work.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They go. It's a way of life.
Yes.
So you go along with it everywhere you go. It's part and parcel of who you are.
What you are talking about is the structured organizations called the church that these people belong to. When they speak with that one voice of the institution.
And referring to ourselves as a Christian nation. Is that
Yes.
fair on the Muslims? Are they not part of the nation? So it's things like that.
Who
as
stops
well.
them from declaring themselves the country a Muslim country?
And we've seen, I want us to look at, so that we can understand what I'm trying to get to. Let's look at some of the Muslim nations, the really strict Islam nations, where the laws are based on extreme Sharia law, and extreme where women are stoned for extramarital affairs, or even suspected for having an affair or sex before marriage and so on. You have to cover yourselves. Those are the extremities that church involvement can lead to. Of course, there it's the religion that leads, it's the religion that governs. Here we have a government, we have a democracy, separation of powers and those structures, and then we have input from the church. Now what I'm saying is, should we have any input from the church in our governance? So I've given you an extreme position with the Islamic states, they're called Islamic states, where the religion is the government. Those are the rules. It's not your choice as to whether you believe or not, whether you follow or not. That is how that becomes the law. Now here, the church gets involved every now and again, where their beliefs and scriptures are put into the law. I've given the example of the abortion one. It should be a subjective choice, a legal choice, where we maybe go to a referendum about it, or we have discussions. There's parliamentarians who represent us, and they articulate the issues and decide whether it's something we should do or not. But church has come and they have put pressure, and this is where we've ended up. And you can see where the extreme of this goes is to the Islamic State, where even women are not allowed to drive as a result.
So let's open up the conversation, CT. I'm sorry.
Carry on.
Let's open up the conversation on 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Should church and state be separate in Kenya? Should church and state be separate in Kenya? That's the conversation we're having this morning. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 21 minutes past 9 o'clock.
Calling all homeowners present and future. It's time to live your dream in your dream home. Whether you're looking to buy or simply renovate it. From Friday 27th to Sunday 29th of September 2019 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. come on over and be part of the Owner Home Expo at KICC, courtesy of the Standard Group in partnership with The Property Show. Get to interact with home developers, real estate representatives, financial advisors, as well as other private and public players in the market to help you realize your home goals. It's your window of opportunity. Your door has finally opened and entry for all will be absolutely free. Owner Home Expo.
Find a home.
Calling all Spice FM listeners. Feeling a little light in the pocket? This is your chance to win as much as 5,000 shillings every day on the Spice Drive with me, Monique, by simply participating in our brand new Spice FM Mystery Voice Challenge. If you think you can recognize this mystery voice,
It's the time I came home at 8.
then call into the Spice Drive every weekday or participate via social media to claim your
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. 23 minutes past 9 o'clock. In the room, we have Ndu Oko, CT Muga, I'm Eric Latif, and Jerry Thorne, who is saying we should separate church from state. We are opening up the phone lines this morning, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. I'm going to just pick this one directly. Good morning, this is Spice FM.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm Dennis calling from Nyeri.
Okay. Morning,
And
Dennis.
I wanted to contribute to the topic.
Please do.
Okay, from my memory of a unit I studied back in campus by the name History of Political Ideas, there was this guy by the name Thomas Hobbes.
Mm-hmm.
And what Thomas Hobbes did, he struggled to put the church, or rather to place the church under government.
Mm-hmm.
What this means is that the church got its place,
Mm-hmm.
and the government got its place.
Mhm.
Meaning that if the church is allowed to make decisions instead,
Mm-hmm.
it will end up affecting maybe those people who are not even members of the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other religions like Islam,
Mhm.
Hindus. So my take is that the church should have its place,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, it's just influencing maybe a minority of those people in the state. That the other people that are others, they're not believers of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And the government is for everybody, for the public.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my take is the church is it's a belief, or rather it's a belief for a few people, maybe, or rather for a certain group of people. But government is there to eliminate the state of nature, whereby they say the state of nature was nasty, brutish, and short. So
Right.
for the sake of order,
Yeah.
for the sake of order and peace for everybody
and
for
tranquility.
development to be there, the government should be there.
Okay.
And the church should be controlled by the
government.
Right.
By the government.
Asante
that's
sana.
it. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great insights.
Ken from Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning.
You're in the Situation Room.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
And, good morning and the rest.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, the discussion that you're having is a very nice discussion, huh? But I just want to put my input on the same.
Please do.
Whereby we cannot separate Christianity. Let me just use the word Christianity, not religion, because if I say religion, it will be verse on using maybe Hindus and Islam and all that. Okay, we cannot separate governance with religion, and in my case, I say Christianity.
Right.
Why?
Is that?
Because as the Bible says, when the Russians are in authority, the people are at peace. Meaning that there are virtues that a Christian person, when he's in authority, he will be able to govern a country or the state because he's being guided by values from the Bible.
That is your belief.
That is my belief.
Okay. So what if somebody believes that when a Muslim is at the helm, that is when there's peace?
Then
what if the Quran says that?
That is a Muslim. Then we'll give the Muslim a chance to talk on that.
Okay. No, I'm just giving you an example that not everybody would agree with the rules in the Bible. People are going to have different rules, and this is why I insist that church and government and state shouldn't be intertwined. But sorry, go on. I cut you short. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. But why? The other thing is that when the virtues, I'm looking from a point of a Christian, so I know the virtues of a Christian. So if you separate these things, definitely there are things that there are virtues that even as you yourself say that to give Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give God what belongs to God and all that. It means that there is a point whereby you can only choose. You have, there is a virtue that you have to work with, even as you lead people. Now, this thing of the Caesar thing, maybe you got it out of context because it was all about the taxes and all that, but the virtues that concerns leading must come from God.
That is, we have to remember this is a belief. And somebody else could have an opposing belief. Whereas with state governance, it's about making sure that everybody is equal, everybody is fair. So what happens when we intertwine state and church, there's conflicting beliefs that come in. So I have to live by the set of rules that you believe in. It is your faith. And then also, of course, we're governed by doctrines that are thousands of years old, and we can't allow them to evolve. We've got to be very careful with things like that. I know in the UK they've had to, for instance, you can now have gay bishops. How would that sit in Kenya? How long would it take us to get there? Whereas that is reflective of the society there, because I keep saying the law is made for man. Man is not made for the law.
But then again, these things are when we allow those things, it means there's a breakdown of virtues in the human race. That's why you.
But virtues, by your definition, that is your definition of virtues, no?
Homosexuality. Let me use the example that you've used. The homosexuality person is governed by somebody. There's a supreme power that governs him. As much as he doesn't want to believe that there is.
That's your belief. That's what you believe.
That's what I believe.
But somebody can believe the complete opposite. We don't know what the truth is. That's the point here.
And that's why City was saying that the religion, when it comes to religion, it's vast, but there has to be a supreme power.
According to you.
Actually, no, it's not according to him.
It is. CT, I know you're very religious, so you're going to chime in and support it. But it's very subjective.
The
definition of religion is that there is a supreme
power.
being.
It's not what this gentleman is saying.
That's what we've defined religion to be this morning.
It's not his. It's just a definition.
Okay, we're talking about in religion, or you're saying in real life? Like, are you saying your belief? What is your belief, that there's a supreme power, or are you saying religion believes that there's a supreme power?
In religion, when you say a person is religious, there has to be a
deity. Absolutely, absolutely.
Deity, yes, you cannot separate a religion with an absence of a deity.
Okay,
that one is not religion.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Asante for calling in this morning, and thank you for your contribution.
Karibu sana.
Let's cross
All
over
right.
to Mombasa, where you have Anne on the line. Good morning, Anne.
Morning.
How are you?
I am very well. How are you?
Good, good.
I've just heard from the guy who's just spoken, and I think the first thing is the laws for any country are usually based to some extent on the Bible. I'll use it because if you argue with anyone who's done law, and you go read the book of Leviticus and the laws of a country, bits of it are usually picked from that book. For me, there's no different. There's no way you can separate religion and state, because at the bottom of religion is morality. So every religion has moral compass, irrespective of if it's Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, whatever, has moral. What is different between the different religions will be the God, Allah, or whatever.
Krishna,
Yes, God, Alpha, yes. That's what is different. But the morality of all these religions is the same. And because of that, it's not like you're governing a country based on Christianity. You're governing it based on morals that go across boards on the different religions, but still do not confine or restrict the spirituality of different people with the different religions.
So what
Yes.
you're saying is what we're borrowing from the Bible, or the reason we have the Bible there, it's the moral basis anyway of any of any laws, which you're absolutely right. A lot of laws are based on the Bible. You have to remember they were the custodians of the truth, the church that is, for a very long time before we could spread information and so on. But we can also look at other civilizations and say, well, actually, yes, there's morals, but we can place different emphasis on different virtues. Now, some people want to place more emphasis on one virtue over another, and if we start to bring religion to be the basis of what we create our laws on, some people would disagree with some of the rules. Do you see what I mean?
No, I would want you to give me an example of one that would be not based on religion, but works.
In terms of, I mean, the Bible itself, or the idea of religion, goes and having religion in the state, it goes against the Constitution when we talk about the right to freedom and freedom of thought or freedom of expression. Because if
and the religion does not restrict that, because let's say for the Catholic courts, for example, they are in the Constitution, but they do not affect me for being a Christian.
But what if I don't want to believe, maybe I don't believe in God, let's say, for example, for argument's sake.
You don't believe in God, yes, but you have morality. You
Yes.
have
No.
your
What I'm talking about is my right to free expression.
But how does the existence of the Catholic court interfere with your
No,
rights?
I'm not talking about the Catholic court. Where did that come in? I'm talking
No,
about
but
if we have the church involved with the state, it would lead to a situation where I'm being forced to believe in things I don't believe in.
But how are
so
you
my
being
right,
forced?
my right to free thought is being impinged on.
Jerry,
and
how are you being
curtailed.
forced?
And Anne is trying to stay in the conversation.
Which she is, and that's great.
At the moment, religion has always been there. You have your agnostics, you have your atheists, or whatever. But the bit, if you don't, let's say for example, if I don't believe in something about the Constitution, I can choose not to not to practice it because it does not go with what I believe in. But I am not going to work for 5-10% of people because the 10% do not believe in something which caters for the next 90%.
But that 90% might actually evolve and change. You've seen Christianity die out in the West. There's very few Christians or people who purport to be Christians. That's changing. But in terms of, let's take for instance abortion. Maybe somebody doesn't believe that life begins at conception, yet they are governed by laws because they're derived from the Bible or from the church that life begins at conception. They can't have a termination. Now, that is a very subjective decision. It's a personal decision. You have people who are for or against. And the laws should be made according to what people feel, not according to what the Bible says or according to what the religious leaders say.
Okay, true. I
So
hear you,
that's
but
where,
now-
and it impinges on the very notions of democracy where the people have a choice. You're coming to us and saying, well, actually, the Bible says this, so tough. So it's something we can't debate. It's you wanted an example of where the
You're
Bible...
postulating a theory. The reality is constitutions are made by a whole mixture of people.
It's different people.
It's representative.
And in this instance, I'm talking about the representation of the church in our constitution. I don't think it should happen.
I can use the example. I can use the example that you just said about abortion.
Mhm.
For example, yes, the Constitution says that it's, life begins at conception, and you know that is a law now. But you don't believe in that. Why not go the other way and make sure that you don't get pregnant in the first place? So you're and you've not.
What if I was Anne? It's no laughing matter. What if I was raped?
I know. Oh, I'm so okay. I don't.
Food for
okay,
thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's another scenario. Okay.
But the point you made is an extremely valid one, and thank you. That was an
Yeah.
excellent point.
It was a
It's
strong one.
not a
yes.
counter argument for abortion, but
Thank you.
Yeah, I get you. Thank you.
And thanks very much
Thanks,
for
Anne.
calling
Thanks
in, for
the
joining in
interaction.
from Mombasa. Are you in traffic, Anne?
Am I in?
In traffic?
Yes, I'm in traffic.
Where, at what point in Mombasa? Give us the
Um,
traffic update from Mombasa.
I'm on Links Road heading to town. There's a bit of traffic.
I see, on Links Road.
That's nearly.
Yeah, that's nearly.
Okay. Asante sana for your contribution.
Thank you, Anne.
And have a good day. Should start be separate from church? Did I say start? Should
Yes, you
church
did.
be
Yeah.
separate from state? From
Thank
church and state be separated. And that's the conversation we're having in this hour. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm opening up the phone lines, still open, 0719 012 600. We'd love to hear what do you think. It's 23 minutes to 10 o'clock.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Traffic.
The overflow from James Gishuru to Wayakiwe is causing quite a bit of traffic heading out towards the CBD, and that joins with traffic coming from the feeder roads from Chiromo, and that is causing a bit of an issue also feeding all the way onto Uhuru Highway. So that's where we see still pockets of traffic still happening around about this time this morning. Limuru Road between Village Market and UNEP, yes, is an issue. Interesting enough, going both ways. And hopefully that will clear up soon. I know there was an accident in that area, and there's a lot of overlapping that's going on. Police are on the scene trying to sort that out, to make sure that you can get where you are going. All right, getting into the CBD, coming out of Mombasa Road and Langata Road and Ngong Road, not so much of an issue around this hour, much better than it was a couple of hours ago. Anything definitely out of the ordinary, ask that you get in touch with us and let us know, and we'll get people moving in that area. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
On across the country, www.spicefm.co.ke, Spice FM KE on Facebook, and on Twitter. Our hashtag is Situation Room. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm Eric Latif in the room. We also have Ndu Oko, CT Muga, and Jerry Thorne.
Yes, talking about religion and its role in the state, and what its role should be, if any, and whether we should be looking to enforce one viewpoint. In allowing the church to have a say in our democracy, it becomes undemocratic, so to speak, because you're enforcing one
But to
viewpoint.
deny them is also undemocratic.
Nobody's
because
denying them.
The church is not a building. It's a group of people, and that group of people will tend to be part and parcel of the community of that country.
Who are dogmatic
and dogmatic or not, they just have as much rights as the next person.
Absolutely,
Yes.
but we don't give every other person that right in
No,
terms
no, no.
of the
These
weight
rights,
we place
these
on their
rights aren't
opinions.
given to specific groups, they're given to everybody. Now it's a question of whether someone takes advantage of the rights that they have been given. Yes.
Well, the
Every
church as
group-
an
every group has
institution
a
is
right to say the
untaxable.
things they want to
It's
say.
not taxed. No, they do have a special privilege in society. They're not taxed. They're not accountable to anybody, and they still have great
where do you
influence
get these
over us.
ideas from?
I want to look at the church as an institution. I'm not talking
Yes,
about
but
a
where do you
a
get these
particular
ideas
church.
from that they are not accountable to anybody?
When you give your money,
look, the church isn't the only institution in this country that perhaps doesn't pay taxes. They are
NGOs.
not not all NGOs. They have to be not-for-profit NGOs.
Yeah.
Right.
They have to be specific. You have to apply for it. It's a privilege that people are given. Now, you can take advantage of the privilege. It exists. It isn't a privilege that is just given to churches.
I think maybe we have to look into some history, of which I don't have, the nitty-gritty of. But one thing I do know, as I said, is the church were the custodians of morality, and they ruled. Now, when we came into democracy, we were trying to get away from this. We were trying to get away from this.
Where the problem started, if you really go back into history, at a certain point in time, some of the most educated people within any community happened to be in the Western community were people who were in the church,
Absolutely.
the ministers and so forth. The problem arose when now the leaders of the church, who were then the kings, were also religious people and also got to the position of being head of the church. That's where the problem began, because the church and the state became one. And as a result of this, you found that even church leaders were then related to the kings and the queens.
Yes.
You then even had where you had, like the Bible, for example, then named after the head of the church, because then you have revisions
King
like the
James.
King James Bible
version.
or the King James version
Version.
of the Bible, which was done specifically for that leader, who
He
then now
authorized
morphed.
it.
He authorized
Yes.
it, who then now morphed from being the king of country to then also the head of the church.
And the church relies on this one constitution that was written, 2,000 years ago? When was the Bible written?
No. Allow me. No.
Over time.
Please.
Is it over time? Sorry, I don't seem to be that
Jerry's talking
knowledgeable
about
in this
something she
particular
doesn't know
aspect.
here.
These
So
are
let's not
doctrines
jump
that are
on her.
thousands of years old that
let's
were being
explain
governed
it.
by.
Okay, so let's explain it this way. I've also got online a gentleman called John from Ngong. John, are you there?
I'm still here.
So before you actually come in, let's first of all hear what CT is going to explain about the writing of the Bible.
No, I'm not explaining about the writing of the Bible. I'm simply, what I was trying to give was a background as to how this church and state issue came about, okay? And it got to a point where people now started differing later on, and then you had the Protestant church, and then you had the Pope. These
And then
problems,
democracy emerged.
No. Yep.
Well, much later. And it was really to get away from the strangles or from the shackles of the religion or the church, in that let people decide. Why are we deciding that you have to be Christian? You have to believe. Why are we enforcing this one viewpoint that is old and archaic and
Why don't you
dogmatic
let- why don't
that
you
is
let John
not,
say what he
is
wants
not
to say?
evolving? Sorry, CT.
John, say what you want to say, please.
Now we actually now have Weber on the line. Weber, good morning. Weber.
Eric.
Yes, yes. You're live on air in the Situation Room. What are your thoughts on this?
The other time you heard about the person who snatched away Mshiriki wife. You heard that?
Yes.
So such a kind of an instance, if it were to be taken to court, which under which circumstance will it be ruled?
Weber,
Will
repeat
it
what you're
be-
saying again, please. We don't seem to be understanding what you're saying. Start again, please, so that we can understand you clearly.
I'm asking, huh?
Yes.
The other time you heard about a pastor who snatched away Mshirika wife.
Yes.
If such a kind of an incident was taken to court,
Yes.
will it be taken? Will it be undertaken by the church or by the state?
If you want the matter decided by the church, you don't go to court. Once you go to court, it goes to the normal secular judicial process.
So you see, that's now taking church matter to the state.
But it's the choice of the individuals who are involved in the issue, is it not?
Sorry?
It's a choice of the individuals who are involved in this issue to take it wherever they feel that the matter can be appropriately adjudicated, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. It's individual, huh?
Yes.
Okay, now there are some, the dominions, huh,
Yes.
which are politicizing and are moving out of the church context.
Yes.
Because you'll find some churches, when it comes to the issue of elections, it becomes personal, such that if someone is not elected into power, it's kind of personal. So how do you go about that? Because to me, I see that it's like the church has lost its direction, and we've sunk so much into the state.
These are individuals who claim to represent the church, giving the church a bad name. Yes.
Don't they have a right to represent the church?
No, they have a right to represent
Their
themselves,
version-
because
their version
anyone who
of the
comes up
church,
with
their
every
version
other
of
sect
religion.
and calls it
Some people are taking it so personal, such that if someone will not get this stuff, it will blow out a lot of issues. So on my side, I'm
Yes.
thinking that the church is losing its direction, and I like it because of the word go you are saying about the church. You're not talking about the Muslims and the Islam, because even if you look at the campaign, when it comes to campaigning times, you'll never find a politician in a mosque. They are always in churches.
Right.
So I guess it is the church is losing its direction, and it's so sinking.
But
and
that's a
we've lost
completely
lives.
different conversation, Weber.
Yeah.
So you're
that's
saying
that's a
church-
conversation for another day. What we're asking about, with or without direction, or even the Qadis court or Islam, should it be part of the government? In that, should church and state be separate?
It should just be part of it because of the kind of the lifestyle and the direction that we're taking. It should just be part of it.
It should be part of it. So if you look at some Islamic states where maybe women aren't allowed to drive and there's serious oppression on women, you agree with that?
No, I don't know.
Weber, thank you very much for your contribution. Asante sana. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. The conversation we're having this morning is, should church and state be separate? Should we separate church and state? Those are the calls that we are taking in this morning. You want to say something?
I want to say something
you're
that in these countries where you have what you call a Sharia law, these people are already Muslims, by the way. If there are people not Muslim, they're a very small minority. And these very states have problems with their own population who do not like that Sharia law. For the simple reason, sometimes what they consider Sharia law is a bent of that law that suits them.
Exactly, and then that
It's
law
got
then
some
becomes
cultural aspect.
Yes.
It becomes a complete cultural
Yes.
way of life.
It is this process that you see within Islam that happened within the Christian church that brought about this discussion about separating the church and the state.
Let me go back to Mombasa.
Yes.
And I've got Dr. Shah on the line. Good morning, Dr. Shah.
Morning.
Morning.
I feel that church or religion rather, let's call it religion instead of church.
Okay.
Because everybody has got a different religion. It should be completely dissociated with each other.
Thank you.
And the reason I would say that is that if you look at the principles and the tenets of all the religion, they all are good. It is the human beings who have changed the interpretation of the religion and the tenets of the religion to suit themselves. And that is where the problem is. So you and me, we all try to change the tenets of the religion to suit yourself and myself. And state should not interfere in the religion. Religion should not interfere in the state. Separate entities.
Okay.
Everybody has got his own principles, his own religion. So be it. That's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Thank
Shah.
you for that, Dr. Shah. I'd like to read something from Thomas Jefferson. This is to do with the First Amendment, which is very clear and cannot actually be overturned even by a majority vote in the USA. So as Thomas Jefferson said, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, and that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence the act of a whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment or religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. So it's entrenched in the American Constitution. And I mean, they're supposed to be the sort of epitome of democracy. I think it also goes against some tenets of democracy, having the church and the state mixing, especially this one idea of enforcing one viewpoint. And these are not necessarily facts. It's a belief. It's a belief system that you're then enforcing on people. And the idea behind democracy is that we get to choose. So I know, CT, you come in and say, well, the church is representative of some people.
Where do we draw the line, Jerry? So, for example, yes, the church, of course, its people belong to various organizations, religious organizations, and religious faiths and beliefs, right? And those...
Is the church even ours? Is Christianity even African? I mean, that's a discussion for another day.
It doesn't matter. As I continue,
but it doesn't matter. Okay, where it irks me is things like abortion and homosexuality.
Where I was heading is also those kind of issues. So we have issues that are of mutual importance to all of us.
Of public interest.
And public
interest.
And the church all of us are contributing
pressure
to this. So the church leadership, as an organization that's representing some members of community, actually comes out and does not go to the state, but comes out and says, you guys, we think that we should take this direction in terms of...
And they seem to have enough of a standing to affect outcomes. That's what I'm saying.
So what is your beef? Is it that they have this permanent stand that they make?
Or is that their influence?
Well,
what is the beef?
It's multi-layered, my beef. The fact that these are archaic, very old laws that are governing us.
Then don't
these are
subscribe to them.
Which I don't, but I'm forced to subscribe to them because they have a push
you are
in
not
our law.
Actually,
Absolutely. I cannot have an abortion.
At what point are you forced?
For instance, I cannot be homosexual in this country. I cannot have an abortion. That is due to the church. So they're enforcing their view on me through the law. And that is where I say the separation.
Is this the only country that has such laws on this planet?
No, it's not the only country. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, generally speaking, I'm not just saying in Kenya. It's a conversation that can be had globally because you do find interference or you find church and state merging in a lot of countries. America is categorical about this wall that they want to build between the church and the state for reasons they know. I mean, I would say that these are the founding fathers of the democracy in Africa. So in America,
yes.
It's an oxymoron there, but the democracy in America. So they would know why it was there.
But also, but we still see church leaders and religious leaders having a lot of influence in the politics of America,
or even taking up political
positions.
But they then have to take an oath to the Constitution and actually say that their oath is not to the Bible. Their allegiance is not to the Bible whilst in leadership. Their allegiance is to the Constitution. They have to take that oath to the Constitution.
We don't live in America. We live here. Let's discuss these things as they affect us here in Kenya.
But we can draw from examples. I mean, Christianity is borrowed anyway.
We've drawn enough.
Well, Christianity...
How adversely does the Christian church influence the community?
For a homosexual, it's terrible. They're not allowed to exist. Their existence is criminal. Do you understand where this leads us?
Sex work is also illegal in this country.
And yet.
Sex work, you can say, is a choice.
Oh.
But it's actually, when you look at those kind of things, it's
make.
the people who speak, not
And
necessarily the church.
Yes.
So if the people speak and say, we don't think, we don't
No, the-
feel that we should
The
head,
church
we should
shouldn't
go
be
this
weighing in
direction.
on matters.
All right,
policy.
let's
they
leave
came in the other day. Sorry, the church came in, and we've seen some really adverse effects of the church. I know, for instance, in Mexico, when they were very against the use of condoms, and they actually helped spread HIV/AIDS. You study and you're involved in.
I
working
work in the
with-
field of
in the
HIV
field,
and
yeah.
AIDS, in research and also in care and treatment.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can agree with me. The church's interference there
No,
led
no, no,
to
no, no,
a very
no, no,
had
no.
a very
Don't use my
adversarial
work as a premise for agreeing with you. I will agree with you based on what you postulate. So say to what you want to say and let me hear it first.
Okay, which we know the church has been involved in, or the Catholic Church in this instance, where they were against the use of protection, the sheath or the condom, whatever we call it, and this led to an increase in the spread of HIV/AIDS. So you can see some negative consequences of church involvement. We've also seen here where the church had some statements to make when we were looking at vaccinating children. So they've fallen into the anti-vaxxers, which is so dangerous globally. But people listen to the church.
No. You're stating it simply, but the truth of the matter is that it wasn't quite, it was presented that way, but there was a discussion and a debate around it. And the debate continued. And if you understand the
debate on
the
what,
church,
the
I'm starting
anti-vaccinations?
even with the condoms. The church, at some point, the Catholic Church is referring to, revised their position on some of those things in time. If you
Right.
followed that discussion.
But
so the
between
discussion,
the time they saw the light and revised their position, how many new cases of HIV had come because of the church's interference
your
in public
position was that
policy?
these are draconian people who have 1,000-year-old rules
Well,
that never
that's
change.
the other thing.
And I'm trying
Who
to
decides?
tell
I
you-
thought that the
and I'm
Bible
trying
is-
to tell you that the Bible is also subject to interpretation for your information.
There are some people who would definitely tell you that the Bible, is living and active.
I
It
have
is here and
Lydia
can
on
be
the line.
applied to your everyday
Yes.
life. And this is what I'm saying, is that we're not talking about something that people are. If you look at Christianity as a religion, it is something that, it's not something that people do, but it's something that people are, essentially, in their practice, every day, living, thinking,
It's a belief
renewing
system.
of the mind. Exactly.
And
Let's
maybe
have
it's
Lydia
based on
hear what
false
Lydia has to
premise.
say.
Lydia calling in from Nairobi. Lydia, good morning.
Yes, good morning. This is Lydia from Nairobi. I would like to say that the law should be above everybody to promote peace. You go into your house peacefully. It is not my right to come and beat you up. You have gone into your house peacefully. So the law should be above religion. Poor lions and elephants, they have nobody to help them. We kill them. So the law is above religion to tell everyone to keep the peace
Thank you.
and manage our lives properly.
We hear you loud and
Lydia,
clear. Lydia.
I love your perspective on life. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Cheers. Have a good day, Lydia.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, if religion is said to be the relationship between you and God, how does it then translate to you telling people how to live their lives?
Because it is a life
No,
religion.
no.
It's not about what
Jerry,
you do
No,
on a
but
particular
no,
day.
no, no, you
It's
can't
about
have
essentially it is
creatures
about
who have
how
to
you
relate to
live.
each
Guys,
other.
Yes, how
guys,
you, because
it's a heated conversation. Thank you very much. I'd like you to give me your closing remark on this particular topic. Ndu.
Well, I think if we're looking at Christianity as a religion, because it is it is not about what you do or how you operate or the things that you do. It is about who you are. And now the argument comes in that you cannot really separate who you are then from really what you do.
What you do.
So I think it would, in the context within which we operate as Kenya, it would be very difficult to separate the two. To begin to even have the conversation where we separate the two is an uphill task.
CT, separate church and state?
Yes, they should be separate.
Get out of here. I'm not even talking to you. I'm not talking to you today. I'm not speaking to you. Go away. You have frustrated me throughout this whole show. Go ahead.
It's not even a spanner in the works. The entire vehicle has been thrown in.
So Jerry, just close the conversation then.
Yeah, think there should be a wall, as Thomas Jefferson put it, between church and state. It's a very strong statement he made with a very clear meaning. First of all, it means that the government cannot make laws that favor one religion over another because it can't make laws related to the establishment of a religion. And also, it can't make laws against the freedom of expression, which is very important and enshrined in our constitution. So it's time we started having these conversations. Should we be governed by doctrines that are thousands of years old? I find that very dogmatic. And should we enforce one viewpoint? We have to remember, these are simply opinions. It's, there's no fact here. So should we let the church tell us what to do in that sense?
That's the conversation. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Tomorrow, we'll catch you right here.